Chapter 1. Young Ling Xiao. Early in the morning, as the first light of dawn painted the sky, a lone figure was already sweating profusely on the training grounds. This was Tianfeng City, the main residence of the Ling family. Huh! A crisp shout tore through the pre-dawn sky, and the young man's appearance became clearer. He looked to be only 13 or 14, slightly tall and thin, with an unhealthy sallow complexion. This was likely due to malnutrition, but the young man had a heroic look. Though not handsome, he definitely possessed the aura a martial artist should have. It was just dawn. The roosters in the yard hadn't crowed yet, let alone anyone else. On the vast training grounds, he was the only one practicing martial art, sweating like rain. Grandpa said that the clumsy bird flies first. If I'm not as good as others, I should put in 10 or even 100 times more effort. I refuse to believe I can't break through to martial vein second level. Those who laughed at me today will be stunned tomorrow. The young man's name was Ling Xiao, and originally he had no connection to the Ling family. About a year ago, the Ling family of Tianfeng City, in order to expand its family strength, sent out invitations. Anyone named Ling could participate in the Ling family's assessment, and those with excellent results would be officially accepted into the Ling family. He entered the Ling family by passing the assessment. At a young age, he had begged for a living with his grandpa and surprisingly activated his martial vein because of a tattered cultivation technique he found, advancing to martial vein first level. He could certainly be called a genius. Even the Ling family members responsible for the assessment at the time praised him highly. However, Ling Xiao knew in his heart that all this was only because of something his grandpa once said. In this world, martial artists reign supreme. If you become a martial artist, we won't have to beg anymore. From then on, he cultivated day and night, not even forgetting to cultivate while begging, which led to his achievements. Others thought he was a genius, but in reality, he just cultivated more desperately than anyone else. After becoming a Ling family member, Ling Xiao and his grandpa moved into the house prepared by the Ling family. At this time, Ling Xiao was filled with anticipation for the future. There was a girl named Ling Yu. She was not from the Tianfeng City Ling family either, but her family background was very good. Ling Xiao used to beg at her doorstep, and this spoiled young miss would always sneak out after her family went inside, smash Ling Xiao's rice bowl on the ground, and then stomp on it with her small leather boots made of advanced materials. She would also add, "I'd rather feed it to a dog than to you." However, after Ling Xiao entered the Ling family, Ling Yu looked at him differently, even actively approaching Ling Xiao to be friends. This filled Ling Xiao with pride, and he resolved to go further in martial art and make a name for himself in the Ling family. However, ideals are grand, but reality is cruel. A mere martial artist at martial vein first level was but a drop in the ocean within the vast Ling family. The Tianfeng City Ling family was a family of over 10,000 people, and with this expansion, the population had reached 20 to 30,000, making them practically the absolute overlords of Tianfeng City. How could such a family truly value a martial artist at martial vein first level? Any maid or servant they pulled out was at martial vein first level. The young men and women of the Ling family's main branch, all of the same age, had excellent foundations. Every single one was a martial artist above martial vein second level, some even reaching martial vein third level. The realm of martial vein fourth level was something Ling Xiao could only look up to. Of course, if he could break through to martial vein second level within a year, Ling Xiao might have been proud. However, some things truly cannot be forced, because the tattered cultivation technique he picked up before conflicted with the Ling family's basic cultivation technique, so he could only cultivate from scratch. Gradually, he had been surpassed by many who came with him. And at this time, Ling Yu, whose attitude towards him had changed, once again became the haughty and spoiled young miss, because she not only break through to martial vein second level, but also became involved with a genius disciple of the Ling family's main branch. Recognizing reality, Ling Xiao did not become disheartened. On the contrary, he did not forget how he came to the Ling family, so he cultivated even harder and more diligently, vowing never to be expelled by the Ling family, otherwise his grandpa, with whom he depended on, would suffer again. The Ling family stipulated that all outer sect disciples who failed to break through to martial vein second level within a year would be expelled or simply become servants of the Ling family. And at this time, only 1 month remained until Ling Xiao's 1-year limit in the Ling family. Whoosh! Ha! As the young man swung his arms, they moved with the force of a tiger, and his shouts were full of fighting spirit. Ling Xiao knew what awaited him after a year, but he would not give up. If he could cultivate from scratch to martial vein first level again, he believed he could cultivate to martial vein second level. Ling Xiao was currently cultivating the Ling family's basic martial art, Maniac Bull Strength. Maniac Bull Strength was the most common basic martial art. It encompassed both cultivation technique and martial skill, It could both raise one's realm and be used for combat, making it a favorite basic martial art among low-rank martial artists. Because he had practiced this set of maniac bull strength so many times, Ling Xiao's movements had a naturally flowing feel when he performed them, indicating that he was quite suited for martial art. Although these common martial art were very ordinary, they also had a rank distinction: basic, elementary, intermediate, advanced, and peak. 5 ranks. Maniac bull strength was merely the most common basic martial art. This rank division was naturally not for fun, but because the higher the rank, the better the effect of the cultivation technique and the greater the power of the martial skill. Ling Xiao was merely an outer sect disciple brought in during the expansion. He didn't even have the Ling family bloodline, and he hadn't shown any extraordinary talent, so he could only cultivate basic martial art. He wasn't even qualified to access elementary martial art. I feel like I'm about to break through, but I always get stuck at the most crucial point. Sigh, if only I had a breakthrough medicinal pill. After practicing for a long time, Ling Xiao took out his water pouch, drank some water, and thought about his helplessness. Through nearly a year of observation, he had come to understand that he was no worse than anyone else. In fact, because he was quite diligent, his cultivation progress should have been faster. The problem actually lay in cultivation technique and medicinal pills. The Ling family's main branch members and wealthy outer sect disciples either had a higher rank cultivation technique or had money to buy breakthrough medicinal pills to aid their breakthrough. Those disciples at Martial Vane's second level had basically all used breakthrough medicinal pills. Such medicinal pills were not too expensive and had no side effects, but Ling Xiao simply couldn't afford them. The Ling family providing him with food and drink was already the greatest benevolence. It was impossible for them to give him money. Get lost. I've told you, you trash, this is my exclusive training spot. You're not qualified to cultivate here. By the time the sun had fully risen, an hour had passed. Ling Xiao packed his things, preparing to leave, because he didn't want to conflict with the Ling family's main branch members. However, it was too late. A furious shout rang out from none other than Ling Chong, a disciple of the Ling family's main branch. As he spoke, Ling Chong even jumped onto the high platform and pushed Ling Xiao. Fortunately, Ling Xiao had been diligently cultivating, so although his realm hadn't break through, his body was very strong. Despite his sallow complexion, there was considerable strength within his thin body. Ling Chong failed to push him. He stood rooted there like an old tree. Ling Chong, I have no grievances with you. Why do you always bully me? Ling Xiao was angry. This was not the first time the other party had treated him this way. What a joke. Do you think I really enjoy bullying a piece of trash like you? It's just that your ears don't work. I warned you long ago not to practice martial art here. Don't spread your trashy chi to us. Ling Chong looked at Ling Xiao, his eyes filled with mockery and amusement. That's right, he was doing it on purpose, but so what? Among all the outer sect disciples brought in during the expansion, only this Ling Xiao dared to disobey him. If not Ling Xiao, then who would he bother? The disciples of the Ling family's main branch all had an innate sense of arrogance, believing that the outer sect disciples brought in during the expansion were merely servants with the title of disciple, to be ordered around at will. Therefore, almost all outer sect disciples have been bullied by the main family's disciples. Some chose silence, some chose to fawn, while Ling Xiao simply chose to be neither humble nor arrogant. Ling Xiao didn't want to cause trouble, but if he didn't practice martial art on the training grounds, he would have to walk a long way to find a suitable training ground. He also had to take care of his grandpa, so going too far was simply not an option. Ling Chong, you're useless. You can't even push this outer sect kid off the training platform. How do you manage to get by? Exactly. You're a martial artist at Martial Vane's second level, right? This kid is only at Martial Vane first level. Is your strength not even as great as his? Hurry up, Ling Chong, drive this kid away. We still need to train. Those with Ling Chong were either disciples of the main branch or outer sect disciples who had allied themselves with these main branch disciples. In any case, they were all people who enjoyed watching a spectacle. After all, onlookers never mind when things get exciting. Damn it, you dare to look down on me? I'll slap this kid down right now and let him know what it means to be a martial artist. Ling Chong, provoked by their taunts, looked at Ling Xiao with disdain and suddenly launched a palm strike, directly hitting Ling Xiao's chest. Is that enough? Blood seeped from the corner of Ling Xiao's mouth, but he did not fall, nor did he fly backward. He could have used the impact to fly back and avoid injury, but he didn't want to. Once a person retreats or fears, they develop that habit. He was unwilling. This kid, he's asking for death. Ling Chong was enraged and kicked at Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, scaring Ling Chong into dodging hastily. This kick actually missed, flying directly off the training platform. Looking at Ling Chong, who had fallen off the training platform, Ling Xiao showed a slight smile on his face, then swayed and collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Chapter 2 Mysterious Fragments. You're awake. When Ling Xiao opened his eyes again, he saw his elderly grandfather. His hair was white, his body thin, and his face withered. Sigh, why did you have to do this? Just give in. Come, drink your medicine. The old man sighed and brought over a bitter-smelling herbal soup. From his grandfather's words, Ling Xiao heard concern and also helplessness. It's nothing, it's not the first time, and I won't give in anyway. Ling Xiao chuckled. Once I break through to Martial Vane's second level, I'll go settle the score with that Ling Xiao. You little rascal. The old man sighed. Although Ling Xiao was a child he had picked up, he had always treated him like his own grandson. Seeing Ling Xiao injured, he felt particularly bad. Ling Xiao took the cooled herbal soup and drank it in one gulp, a smile appearing on his face. Actually, his refusal to give in wasn't just due to his stubbornness. There was another reason. Ever since he started cultivating that incomplete manual, his body's recovery speed had become exceptionally fast. Before, he had been knocked unconscious several times like today, but he would wake up in less than half an hour, his body mostly recovered, and after drinking some herbal soup, he would be almost completely healed. The Ling family sent someone over just now. The old man seemed to hesitate at this point. Grandfather, just say what you need to say. Is there anything I can't accept? The old man looked at Ling Xiao and then sighed. They told you to prepare to process the procedures for leaving the Ling family. Leave the Ling family? Why? Ling Xiao exclaimed in surprise. Only by entering the Ling family could he learn better martial art cultivation technique and make a name for himself. If he left the Ling family, he truly didn't know when his fate would change. They said there is still half a month until the year-end grand competition, and this time, all Outer Sect disciples who have not reached Martial Vane's second level are not qualified to participate and will be expelled from the Ling family. At this point, the old man sighed again. I heard that the Ling family had some resources seized by other families and can no longer afford to support so many people. So they plan to streamline their disciple, and the original rules have become even more stringent. How could this be? Ling Xiao was a little stunned. He had confidence in breaking through in a month, but half a month was simply too rushed. However, the blow was far from over. The old man hadn't finished speaking yet. Also, even if you break through to Martial Vane's second level within this half month, it only temporarily retains your Outer Sect disciple qualification. If you cannot reach Martial Vane third level before the age of 14, all Outer Sect disciple must become Ling family servants. Otherwise, their martial art will be abolished, and they will be expelled from the Ling family. This is too much. Ling Xiao understood very well that he was 13 this year and would be 14 after the new year. How could he possibly reach Martial Vane third level? If he became a servant, it meant his grandfather would no longer be qualified to live in the Ling family. How could he possibly stay here with peace of mind? This was no longer a matter of face. It was a matter of life and death. Moreover, when he was chosen by the Ling family, his beggar gang brothers who used to beg with him were all very envious. If he left the Ling family like this, what face would he have to return to the beggar gang? Yes, they're a large family, so they naturally have their own rules. We are, after all, just outsiders. The old man suddenly smiled. Forget it. If it really doesn't work out, this old man will go back to begging. It's nothing. Don't let me delay your future. No. Ling Xiao shook his head and said, Grandfather, even if there is the slightest possibility, I will not give up. I will work even harder than before and strive to reach the Martial Vane third level realm before I turn 14. I must make sure you live a good life. He gritted his teeth, his hands tightly clenched. I'll get my all. Child, you're already trying so hard. If you try even harder, you might not break through your realm, but your body might collapse instead. The old man sighed. We still need to face reality. Breaking through to Martial Vane's second level in half a month is almost impossible. It's better to make plans early. Ling Xiao felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over his head. Yes, he hadn't been able to break through in a year, so why would he be able to break through in half a month? His heart kept sinking. The thing he feared most was that even if he tried harder, it would be useless. If it were a month, it would be better. At least then he would have a 30 to 40% chance. But half a month, although he was unwilling to admit it, the fact was that unless a miracle occurred, it was absolutely impossible. Child, don't be too sad. As long as we, grandfather and grandson, are safe and sound, that's enough. Your grandfather doesn't expect you to be amazing. As long as you are well, that's better than anything. The old man's thoughts were simple. He didn't want Ling Xiao to bear too heavy a mental burden. If you're worried about those beggar brothers making fun of you, there's no need. They're all unfortunate people and won't laugh at you. If you succeed, they'll be happy. If you fail, they'll still accept you. Go back to being an ordinary beggar? No. Ling Xiao firmly shook his head and said, Grandfather, have you forgotten how we used to be bullied on the streets? Have you forgotten how Doggy was beaten to death? Have you forgotten about those malicious people who gave us food laced with rat poison? That time, over 100 brothers died, but we couldn't resist. That person had martial artists protecting him. A few of us went, and our legs were broken. Do you want us to continue living like pigs and dogs? I, Ling Xiao, refuse to accept this. I am no worse than anyone. I believe there is always a way out. Ling Xiao actually didn't have much ambition. He cultivated martial art and became a martial artist just to live a better life and to avenge his deceased brothers. The old man was already in tears, for he knew that Ling Xiao was right. All of this was true. If Ling Xiao could not become a martial artist, all the tragedies would continue to happen. Sigh. Originally, I wasn't going to give you the latter half of this book, mainly because I was afraid you couldn't handle it. But now, I can't worry about that anymore. This old man, am truly convinced by you. The old man took out a book from his clothes-fitting clothes. No, to be precise, it should be a damaged book. This isn't the other part of the previous, incomplete manual. Ling Xiao asked. That's right. Actually, when your grandfather found the book, it was complete, but there's a sentence in the book. See for yourself. The old man turned to the page that connected to the first half. If you do not possess the determination of a bedrock and powerful motivation, do not cultivate the content after this page. Otherwise, you will surely die. This was a line of words written in blood on the book page. Grandfather, don't worry. I have the determination and the motivation. Nothing will happen. Ling Xiao excitedly took the latter half of the book to his room, pieced it together with the first half, and then read it from beginning to end. What is this? Amidst his exclamation, a golden light actually flew out from the book page and shot directly into his body. He was startled, but he didn't find anything unusual about his body. Just as he relaxed his guard, a picture suddenly appeared in his mind. It was a painting. The content of the painting was very complex, but overall, it seemed to be a landscape painting with mountains and water and also buildings, as if it stretched endlessly. The painting was shrouded in mist, making it impossible to see all the content. Only a corner of it was visible, which was a village with people and animals, looking very peaceful. Chapter 3. Mountain and River Martial Spirit. Suddenly, a vortex appeared in the painting. Ling Xiao felt his vision go dark, and he was sucked in a vortex. When he could see things again, he found himself in a village filled with strangers. However, when these strangers saw him, they all seemed very respectful, cupping their hands in greeting. They even called him Mountain and River Master. Could this be the village from that painting just now? Ling Xiao was completely confused by the situation before him. He suddenly remembered that there was such a village in the painting he had seen earlier, and its structure was almost identical. The village was quiet and free of disputes, giving people a very comfortable feeling. But Ling Xiao was very anxious. What if he was trapped here? Ancient myriad races, mountain and river martial soul, dominating myriad worlds, endless life, vast universe, innate calamity, martial god slumber, today's revival. The fated one has arrived. Suddenly, a woman walked from a distance, treading on air, ethereal and indistinct, like a fairy from a heavenly palace, stunningly beautiful. Her voice was somewhat hollow and profound, as if it came from a different space. Fairy, who are you? Ling Xiao asked nervously. You do not need to know who I am, nor do you need to know where I come from. You only need to know that from today onwards, you have awakened the mountain and river martial soul, and you are the mountain and river master, the dominator of heaven and earth. The woman kept walking, but it seemed as if she would never reach Ling Xiao. Mountain and river martial soul, mountain and river master, dominator of heaven and earth. Ling Xiao himself wanted to laugh. Could a mere martial artist of martial vein, first level, possess such ability? However, he had heard of martial soul. As early as the ancient times, martial artists could cultivate martial soul, but later, a great calamity occurred between heaven and earth, and since then, martial soul disappeared. Could it be that he had awakened a martial soul that had already vanished? Starting from the ancient times, to resist the invasion of the myriad races, humans began to cultivate martial art. The most powerful among them was the mountain and river master. He awakened the mountain and river martial soul and, with his own strength, resisted the myriad races, leaving a glorious legacy for thousands of years. And now, you are the second person to awaken the mountain and river martial soul. The hope of humanity may rest upon you. Can humanity once again become the spirit of all things, the king of the myriad races? Perhaps you are the answer. After speaking, the woman's figure became more and more distant, eventually disappearing into the void. At the same time, Ling Xiao felt his body float up lightly, and then his vision blurred again. When he could see things, he was already back in his original room. The tattered book had long since vanished without a trace, which made Ling Xiao almost certain. He was definitely not dreaming earlier. It was a very real scene. Mountain and river martial soul. Huh? What exactly will its function be? Ling Xiao was full of confusion, because up until now, he had not discovered the specific function of the mountain and river martial soul. Things like mountain and river master and king of the myriad races were too far away from him. He just wanted to break through to martial vein 2nd level now, and then continue to work hard to break through to martial vein 3rd level. After thinking for a moment, since the book was gone, and he couldn't continue practicing, he could only continue to cultivate maniac bull strength. He had been unconscious for so long, wasting far too much time. He jumped out of bed, intending to stretch his muscles and bones, but the moment he performed maniac bull strength, he was stunned, because as he practiced maniac bull strength, there was also a figure in the mountain and river diagram practicing maniac bull strength. The only difference was that the person in the mountain and river diagram had truly reached a state of perfection. The simplest basic martial art, maniac bull strength, in the hands of the person in the painting had not a single flaw. Ling Xiao stood rooted to the spot. After a moment, he suddenly came to his senses and quickly resumed practicing maniac bull strength, following the movements of the person in the painting. It felt completely different from before. Although he was proficient in practicing it previously, it always lacked a sense of fluidity. Now, it was different. The entire movement was simply seamless. Not only that, but every time he practiced maniac bull strength, he could feel his true chi within his body becoming a bit more abundant. It worked. The 2nd martial vein had loosened under the impact of this true chi. Ling Xiao was absolutely confident that he would be able to break through to martial vein 2nd level by tomorrow at the latest. This was simply a miracle. Because he was worried about being too astonishing, he had originally planned to go outside to practice martial arts. But he didn't leave it all and practiced repeatedly in his room instead. He only stopped practicing when his movements were exactly the same as and completely overlapped with those of the person in the painting. It was already the morning of the next day, and he was so excited that he hadn't slept all night. "Son, time for breakfast." His grandfather's voice came from outside the door. Coming. Ling Xiao exited his room, and his grandfather had already prepared breakfast. Because their status in the Ling family was low, the rations they received were very small. The porridge was truly thin, with hardly any grains of rice. The dishes were just wild vegetables and rotten greens, but prepared by Ling Xiao's grandfather, they tasted quite good. Huh, what's going on? While eating, Ling Xiao discovered something unexpected again. 2 images appeared in the mountain and river diagram. One displayed Ling Xiao's grandfather, precisely indicating all the current physical problems of Ling Xiao's grandfather. "Grandpa, what's wrong with your ribs?" Without the mountain and river diagram, Ling Xiao would never have discovered that one of his grandfather's ribs was actually broken. And it was a fresh injury. According to the analysis of the mountain and river diagram, it was caused by someone striking him with a palm. "It's nothing, really it's nothing, okay?" The old man quickly shook his head. He didn't know how Ling Xiao had found out. He clearly thought he had hidden it very well. "Who did it?" Ling Xiao put down his chopsticks and stood up, asking coldly. He could tolerate others bullying him, but he absolutely could not tolerate anyone laying a hand on his grandfather. Without his grandfather, there would be no Ling Xiao today. If you don't tell me, I won't eat from now on. I'll starve myself to death." Ling Xiao was serious. He knew his grandfather wanted to protect him, but he couldn't swallow this anger. "Ling Xiao." The old man sighed, "But it's fine now. I used to get beaten a lot when begging. I'm used to it. A broken rib is fine." Ling Xiao threw down his chopsticks and ran out, leaving only one sentence. "Grandpa, I'm going to find Ling Chong." For some reason, Ling Xiao was now full of confidence. He always felt that he could definitely win if he faced Ling Chong again. The function of the mountain and river martial soul was truly too powerful. It seemed capable of simulating and analyzing anything in this world. Besides his grandfather's situation just now, the second image was of his grandfather cooking, but it was clearly a perfected scene. How to turn rotten vegetable leaves into exquisite delicacies. It's just that he wasn't interested in those things right now. He really wanted to know if the mountain and river martial soul could also simulate an opponent's martial art. If it could, then he would truly be like a carp leaping over the dragon gate. On the training ground, Ling Chong was flirting with several female disciples, seemingly completely unconcerned about the lives of others. This guy had broken Ling Xiao's grandfather's rib and didn't even bother to call a doctor to look at it. Seeing this scene, a strong fire of hatred brewed in Ling Xiao's eyes. #4 Chapter 4. Defeat the enemy with one move. On the training ground, Ling Chong also saw the aggressive Ling Xiao. A sneer of disdain appeared between his brows. "What's wrong, trash? Want to avenge your grandpa? Ha 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 ha." Ling Chong's disdainful question made the surrounding Ling family disciples also burst into laughter, because they felt Ling Xiao was overestimating himself. You have repeatedly humiliated me, and I did not bother with you because my skills were inferior, but you injure my grandpa, and I cannot forgive you. Ling Xiao looked at Ling Chong, feeling a bit nervous in his heart, but also possessing strong self-confidence. The appearance of the mountain and river martial soul opened a door to success for him. And today's duel with Ling Chong was the best test. You won't forgive me? Ling Chong seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world, and he said disdainfully, if I can break that old beggar's ribs, I can break yours. Ling Chong, just one palm strike will solve the problem. This kid is as useless as that old beggar. Someone next to him egged him on. Ha, if this trash can't be dealt with in one palm strike, what face do I, Ling Chong, have left in the Ling family? Amidst the loud laughter, Ling Chong suddenly moved. His whole person seemed to transform into a giant, looking down at Ling Xiao. The powerful aura made Ling Xiao gasp for breath. Is this the strength of a martial vein second-level martial artist? Although there's only one realm difference from martial vein first level, the gap is too great. The surrounding crowd looked at Ling Xiao's shocked eyes, all revealing schadenfreude smiles. In their opinion, this battle had already ended before it even began. How could Ling Xiao be Ling Chong's opponent? Suddenly, Ling Chong struck Ling Xiao with a palm. This palm strike clearly looked like the size of a normal person's hand. However, strangely, in Ling Xiao's eyes, it transformed into a giant palm the size of a millstone, truly like the palm of a giant. This palm strike actually made Ling Xiao seem to see a giant who could easily slap him to death. This must be the giant spirit god palm. I remember it's an advanced martial art. The Ling family disciples, naturally, had good eyesight and recognized Ling Chong's palm technique, exclaiming in surprise. What a joke. No matter how strong Ling Chong is, he's just a martial vein second-level martial artist. What qualifications does he have to cultivate advanced martial art? My strength is the same as his, and I can only choose elementary martial art. I don't even have the qualification to pick intermediate martial art. How can you compare to him? Ling Chong has a good father. His father is our Ling family's 9th master. His grandpa is our old family headling. No wonder Ling Chong has always been so arrogant and didn't have to be punished for breaking the old beggar's ribs. With the advanced martial art giant spirit god palm unleashed, Ling Xiao has no chance of winning. Did you think he had one originally? Unless he's an absolute genius, trying to challenge across realms is pure daydreaming. The huge advantage brought by advanced martial art caused even some people within the family whose cultivation was higher than Ling Chong's to feel immense pressure. Martial art is graded precisely because of different power, different effects. A martial vein second-level martial artist who has cultivated advanced martial art is very likely to defeat a martial vein third-level martial artist. Ling Chong, you think highly of me, actually using an advanced martial art. Ling Xiao couldn't help but feel a little emotional. If he hadn't obtained the mountain and river martial soul, he would definitely have broken a few ribs today. People like him don't even qualify to learn elementary martial art. They can only learn basic martial art. At the starting line, he had already lost to others. Without the mountain and river martial soul, he would probably find it very difficult to make a name for himself. At that instant, under the immense pressure of the advanced martial art, Ling Xiao actually smiled. Of course he smiled, because another Ling Chong indeed appeared in the mountain and river diagram. The weaknesses and flaws exposed by this Ling Chong when performing the giant spirit god palm were all pointed out one by one. Of course, no one else knew this. Only Ling Xiao himself knew. However, even knowing Ling Chong's flaws, to hit him with one strike, one must seize the opportunity well. Fortunately, he himself had cultivated diligently for the past year, and coupled with being often bullied by Ling Chong, his duel experience was still very rich. What's more, his body had already been transformed by the mountain and river martial soul, so whether it was his reaction or his senses, they had improved by more than several times. This was his confidence in winning. Seeing the smile on Ling Xiao's face, a chill involuntarily arose in Ling Chong's heart, as if his entire being had been completely seen through by Ling Xiao. Putting on a show. Watch my giant spirit god palm of destruction. The giant spirit god palm only has 4 moves in total, and the destruction move is the most powerful and is a move used to kill people. Although Ling Chong could not unleash the true power of this move due to his strength, he still felt it was easy to deal with Ling Xiao, who was only at the martial vein first level. The so-called destruction is the aura of destroying heaven and earth. Although Ling Chong couldn't achieve it yet, in the eyes of those around him, his entire being had actually transformed into a true Qi condensed phantom, a huge golden giant palm striking down at Ling Xiao's head. So fast, so ruthless. The onlookers, forced back by the terrifying aura, gained a deeper understanding of advanced martial art. With this move, Ling Xiao would not just lose, but would surely die. Although the Ling family did not allow disciples to harm each other, injuring someone was fine, but killing someone would result in severe punishment. However, Ling Xiao was the son of Ninth Master and the grandson of old family head Ling. So who was he afraid of? Just as many people thought Ling Xiao was surely going to die, Ling Xiao moved. His body seemed to transform into a maniac bull, directly crashing into Ling Qiang's embrace. Ling Qiang didn't even realize what was happening, and his entire body flew out like a kite with a broken string. Strike the snake at its 7 inches. Although Ling Xiao used a basic martial art, he precisely hit Ling Qiang's flaw, making Ling Qiang's imposing palm strike a joke. What happened? Why was it Ling Qiang who flew out? Because Ling Xiao's movements were too fast, they didn't even clearly see what happened. My ribs! Ling Qiang, who fell to the ground, screamed. I said, those who harm my grandpa will absolutely not be forgiven. You want to defeat me with 1 palm, and I will defeat you with 1 move. Although he was nervous and excited, and even couldn't believe it was true, Ling Xiao, who grew up among beggars, showed a more composed mindset than his peers. He knew why he defeated Ling Qiao. The analysis and practice of the mountain and river diagram, coupled with his usual hard work, led to today's outcome. However, what confused him was that at the moment of his attack, he seemed to feel his body transform into a gust of wind. That speed was much faster than usual. Could that be another function of the mountain and river martial soul? Ling Qiao lost. Oh my goodness, my eyes aren't deceiving me, are they? He really lost, and his ribs were broken. What exactly happened with Ling Xiao just now? Is maniac bull's strength that powerful? The scene was already bustling with noise, because they were very shocked that Ling Xiao, who was completely underestimated, actually severely injured Ling Qiao with 1 move. Ling Xiao, you are too vicious. I didn't use my full strength, but you wanted my life. Compared to the pain of broken ribs, Ling Qiao seemed to care more about his face, so he immediately lied, saying something completely unreasonable. However, even with such a completely unreasonable reason, some people actually supported it. No wonder I said Ling Xiao could win. So Ling Qiao held back. This Ling Xiao is too ungrateful. A Ling family disciple in the crowd said with conviction. Ling Qiao lost, but in their eyes, Ling Qiao represented the main family disciples, and such an ugly defeat was an insult to all the main family disciples. Held back, Ling Xiao couldn't help but sneer. According to the analysis and practice of the mountain and river diagram, Ling Qiang's palm strike was so powerful that he wished he could kill him. The so-called holding back was pure nonsense. Chapter 5 Breakthrough. If you lose, you lose. Why make excuses? So this is the quality of the Ling family's direct descendants. Facing Ling Qiang's sophistry and the crowd's discussions, Ling Xiao simply threw out a sentence and turned to leave. Ling Qiao gritted his teeth in anger. He roared at Ling Xiao, "Little beggar, just you wait. When my injuries heal, I definitely won't go easy on you again." After speaking, he also clutched his chest, his face pale, and was helped away by 2 outer sect disciples. In Ling Qiang's view, his loss to Ling Xiao today was merely due to underestimating him. Previously, when they fought, that kid never retaliated, but today he actually counterattacked proactively. No, he must train harder. Next time, he will definitely make Ling Xiao pay the price. Ling Xiao returned home, told his grandfather about defeating Ling Qiao, and then went back to his room to continue cultivating. He knew very well that his victory over Ling Qiao today was indeed somewhat lucky. Firstly, his opponent underestimated him, and secondly, he relied on the effect of his mountain and river martial soul. But that was not true strength after all. The advanced martial art Ling Qiao cultivated was second only to top-tier martial art among secular martial art, if he truly mastered it. Even if the mountain and river martial soul could analyze its flaws, Ling Xiao might not be able to seize them. Therefore, Ling Xiao had already thought it through. It takes a good hammer to strike good iron. While having the mountain and river martial soul help was good, his own strength improvement was the key. If he could reach the martial vein's second level, breaking through the second martial vein, then perhaps, even if Ling Qiao didn't underestimate him, he could still win against Ling Qiao once more by relying on the mountain and river martial soul. But it definitely wouldn't work now. After all, one must know that the opening of each martial vein brings a huge increase in strength. The gap between the martial vein first level and the martial vein second level is very large. The human body has 9 martial veins, hence it is also called martial vein 9th level. Among them, every 3 levels constitute a stage. The first stage, which is the first 3 levels, is also known as the awakening stage. As the name suggests, it is about awakening to the martial artist's power, strengthening the body, and laying the foundation for martial art cultivation. Generally speaking, in the awakening stage, with each martial vein opened, physical strength will increase by 1 to 200 gene. At the same time, the true chi within the body will also increase by 100 standard points. Standard points are the unit of a martial artist's true chi. Generally, martial artists don't bother saying it so complicatedly, but rather directly state how many points of true chi they have. In battles between martial artists, what often determines victory or defeat is actually strength and true chi content. In other words, a martial artist at the martial vein first level compared to a martial artist at the martial vein second level not only has 1 to 200 gene less strength, but also 100 points less true chi, which is a significant disadvantage in combat. This is why those people were so surprised when Ling Xiao, with his martial vein first level strength, defeated Ling Xiao, who was at the martial vein second level, in one move. So much so that they were even willing to believe a very absurd reason. 1 to 200 gene of strength and 100 points of true chi are truly too important for a martial artist. Therefore, Ling Xiao felt that the best way, while temporarily unable to obtain higher-level martial art scriptures, was to quickly break through. Once he reached the martial vein second level, he would be qualified to enter the Ling family's martial arts library to select higher-level martial art scriptures. The martial vein second level is a turning point. Thinking of this, Ling Xiao no longer hesitated. He began to repeatedly practice the maniac bull strength in his room. Of course, each practice session was performed according to the movements of the figure in the mountain and river diagram. The maniac bull strength has only 9 forms in total. Currently, Ling Xiao can only perfectly replicate the first 3 forms, exactly like the figure in the mountain and river diagram. This is far from enough. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Repeat constantly. Practice constantly. Ling Xiao not only found that all his movements became fluid and extremely smooth, but also that each move and each form seemed to contain more powerful strength than before. Of course, what made him happiest was that after more than 10 repetitions, in addition to the first 3 forms, the subsequent 4th, 5th, and 6th forms also finally reached perfection. However, the surprise was far from over. During each cultivation process, he would discover that a stream of energy would slowly flow from the mountain and river martial soul into his Dantian martial vein. This mountain and river martial soul actually seems capable of converting natural energy into true chi and then allowing the martial artist to possess it. Although this is still just Ling Xiao's guess, if this is true, then no matter what cultivation technique Ling Xiao cultivates in the future, the final cultivation effect might be much better than others. After all, he is cultivating, and the mountain and river martial soul is also helping him cultivate, which will speed up the improvement. In addition, he also discovered a change in the mountain and river martial soul. The mountain and river diagram, which originally only showed a corner of the village within the clouds and mist, gradually revealed more of its scenery. Although it was only a slight increase, it represented a possibility. The effects of the mountain and river martial soul might not have been fully explored by him yet. When the clouds and mist completely disappear and the mountain and river diagram is fully revealed, perhaps that will be the true meaning of the mountain and river martial soul's complete awakening. Let's put in more effort and continue to work hard. Although he still knew very little about the mountain and river martial soul, Ling Xiao knew that at the very least, this thing was harmless to him. Once again, he began to practice the maniac bull strength repeatedly, tirelessly, this time choosing to intensify his practice on the last 3 forms that had not yet been perfected. From morning until nightfall, he hardly rested, except for meal times. The final result was that the 7th and 8th forms were also perfected. He estimated that as long as he could perfectly practice the 9th form, he should be able to break through the martial vein second level restriction. However, he was not a machine after all, but only a 13-year-old child. In the end, he simply lay on the ground and fell asleep while practicing. The first thing Ling Xiao did after getting up from the ground the next morning was surprisingly to cultivate again. There was no other way. The strong sense of crisis and pressure forced him to strive hard. It was pitiful that he didn't even have the qualifications to go to the training ground now. One must know that the reason that training ground was so sought after was not just a matter of face. It was because that training ground was built by the Ling family's old ancestor using special materials, and the stone bricks laid on the ground were special. Cultivating there not only consumed less physical energy, but also yielded more rewards. One day, I will not only cultivate openly in the training ground, but I will also let my grandfather live in a better house. This dilapidated house now, once it rained, it leaked terribly, almost like the broken temple he used to live in when he was a beggar. This morning, Ling Xiao focused his cultivation on the 9th form, practicing it repeatedly. Finally, after practicing it over 100 times, he felt an unprecedented sense of comfort and exhilaration. All 9 forms of the maniac bull strength were perfected, exactly like the movements of the person in the mountain and river diagram. The room is too cramped. Why not try its power outside? After perfecting the maniac bull strength, Ling Xiao truly wanted to test the power of this basic martial art. So he went out, but instead of going to the training ground, he exited the main gate of the Ling family and went to a small forest outside. With a furious shout, Ling Xiao seemed to transform into a roaring wild bull, directly charging into a huge rock in front of him. The huge rock weighed about 200 to 300 gene. Previously, Ling Xiao could only leave some marks on it, and breaking it was almost impossible. However, this time, as the furious wild bull crashed into the huge rock, the stone shattered in response, emitting a roar. Martial Vein, 2nd level. I finally broke through. Chapter 6, Genius Ling Foam. Although I had anticipated a breakthrough after perfecting Maniac Bull Strength, that was merely an expectation. Now, Ling Xiao personally experienced the destructive power brought by this surge of fierce strength, and he was ecstatic. Indeed, there's always a way out. He had originally thought it would take a month to potentially break through to Martial Vein 2nd level. Yet, unexpectedly, he had already achieved a breakthrough on the 3rd day after obtaining the Mountain and River Martial Soul. At this rate, his future truly seems limitless. The mountain and river diagram underwent another change. The clouds dispersed a bit more, revealing a household. However, this household was not human, but rather of the ox demon race, one of the primordial 10,000 races. They all possessed ox heads and human bodies, were incredibly strong, and had terrifying power. What does this signify? Ling Xiao was a bit confused, but he absolutely did not believe this was a coincidence. He had just perfected Maniac Bull Strength, and now an ox demon race household appeared in the village. To say there was no connection, he absolutely refused to believe it. However, thinking about such matters further was useless. For now, he should consider how to face the Ling family's annual grand competition. This competition is the only opportunity for outer sect disciples to make a name for themselves. Things that are usually unattainable might be acquired through such a grand competition. Of course, you must achieve a ranking. As one's strength increases rapidly, so does one's ambition. Previously, Ling Xiao would never have dared to dream of becoming a martial artist above Martial Vein 3rd level, as he felt it was too distant and unrealistic. Martial Vein 9th level. 1 to 3 levels are the awakening stage, also known in the mundane world as martial student, the lowest tier martial artist existence. The best martial students can possess 1,000 gene of strength, capable of tearing apart tigers and leopards, and punching wolves and bears, already considered extraordinary individuals in the eyes of ordinary people. However, after Martial Vein 4th level, a completely different change occurs. Martial Vein 4th to 6th levels belong to the Protective Aura stage and will receive the official title of Martial Apprentice. The biggest characteristic of this stage is that true chi will transform into Protective Aura, allowing one to injure others from a distance. Possessing Protective Aura will enable one to do much, much more, and this is the goal pursued by countless martial artists. Many people spend their entire lives unable to achieve it. Yet now, Ling Xiao strongly felt that he might have a chance to become a martial apprentice. This dream was no longer ethereal, but had become very real, something he could reach out and grasp. During dinner, Ling Xiao excitedly told his grandfather the news of his breakthrough to Martial Vein 2nd level. The old man, after being incredibly shocked, watched Ling Xiao's demonstration and finally believed him, tears streaming down his face. Good child, if your grandfather can see such progress from you, then even if I die, I will be content. Grandpa, after I participate in the annual grand competition, I will invite the best doctor to heal your injuries. It was quite humiliating to know that his grandfather's ribs were broken, yet have no money for treatment, causing the old man to suffer and lose sleep at night. But the only thing Ling Xiao could do was strive to improve. The prizes in the annual grand competition were very generous and could be chosen freely. Just bear with it a little longer, it's almost time. Grandpa is fine. Don't push yourself too hard. Although you've broken through to Martial Vein 2nd level, there are too many martial artists at this level. If you push too hard, you'll get hurt. The old man's thoughts were simple. He didn't want Ling Xiao to get hurt for his sake. But Ling Xiao's thoughts were equally simple. To heal his grandfather's injuries and to make a name for himself, he absolutely had to achieve a good ranking in this annual grand competition. There's still time. Next, I'll go to the martial arts library to select a more advanced cultivation technique suitable for me. With a better cultivation technique, I believe my progress will be even faster. The martial arts library, as its name suggests, is a place for storing books. Besides some of the Ling family's historical records, most of its contents are martial art classics. After dinner, Ling Xiao impatiently rushed to the martial arts library. Along the way, many people pointed and whispered about him. However, he didn't care. Improving his strength was better than anything else. Little beggar. Suddenly, a crisp voice rang out. A man and a woman had just emerged from the entrance of the martial arts library. The woman was lively and adorable, with a fiery and charming demeanor. The man was dashing and imposing, with considerable strength. The one who called Ling Xiao a little beggar was the woman, who was also the spoiled young miss who used to frequently bully him and his grandfather. Later, after he became a disciple of the Ling family, this woman was very attentive to him, but when he failed to break through to martial Vane's second level for a long time, this woman then spoke ill of him and threw herself into the arms of the young man beside her. Ling Xiao had absolutely no good feelings for this girl. What if she's cute? If her heart is more venomous than a viper, then she's merely gold on the outside, rot within. You're the little beggar you Mimi spoke of? You actually broke through to martial Vane's second level, not bad, but among outer sect disciples, you're considered relatively poor. You still need to work harder. Before Ling Xiao could respond to Ling Yu, the young man looked down at Ling Xiao with a condescending gaze, speaking like a senior from a high position. Ling Feng, a direct disciple of the Ling family. Martial Vane third level P cultivation, a disciple of the Ling family's elite hall. Ling Xiao looked at Ling Feng. In the past, in front of this person, he felt only inferiority and helplessness. However, now he didn't care. It was just martial Vane third level. He would break through very soon. Ling Yu, you've indeed chosen a good man, but Ling Feng, this woman who could abandon me like a worn-out shoe will, sooner or later, do the same to you. Ling Xiao said indifferently. They were both 13-year-old children. He didn't feel that Ling Feng was superior. I don't think you Mimi did anything wrong. Women like the strongest. It has always been so since ancient times. Ling Feng snorted coldly. Ling Xiao chuckled. Are you so confident that I'll never catch up or surpass you? Yes. Ling Feng said proudly. All right, in that case, I won't say much more. You two go ahead. I still need to go to the martial arts library. Wait a moment. Ling Yu looked at Ling Xiao with a smile and said, Little beggar, a person's fate is predetermined. You were born a beggar, and you'll only ever be a beggar. But I am already a disciple of the Ling family. It's useless. You'll still end up as a beggar sooner or later. If you don't get a ranking in this annual grand competition, then you won't be able to enter the elite hall. If you can't enter the elite hall, you'll have to become a martial artist of martial Vane third level before you turn 14. Can you do that? If not, you'll just have to go back to being a beggar. Ling Yu said triumphantly. Of course, there's also a way. Obediently become a servant of the Ling family, for example, by following my brother Feng. He can protect you from being bullied by that Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao's face showed a disdainful sneer, even when he didn't have the mountain and river martial soul. He had never thought of becoming anyone's servant. What's more, he was now far from what he used to be. People like Ling Qiong and Ling Feng would sooner or later be trampled under his feet. Make him a servant? Ridiculous. Has no one told you that Ling Qiong has already been beaten onto his sickbed by me? Ling Xiao said indifferently. You're a good-for-nothing, and Ling Qiong is also a good-for-nothing. What's there to say about a duel between good-for-nothings? Suddenly, Ling Feng's words rang out again. A good-for-nothing? The last person who called me a good-for-nothing broke 2 ribs. I wonder what will happen to you. Ling Xiao looked at Ling Feng, showing no intention of backing down. Good. You good-for-nothing. You have guts. Don't worry, I won't lay a hand on you today. Anyway, there's less than half a month until the annual grand competition. At that time, I'll make you realize that a good-for-nothing is always a good-for-nothing. A servant can never climb above his master. Ling Feng laughed wildly as if he had heard the biggest joke in the world. Then let's settle it then. Chapter 7 Deliberately Making Things Difficult. The day of the grand competition is when you and I will truly compete. Ling Xiao threw down this statement, then turned and entered the martial arts library. Even with a silver tongue, if he lost the grand competition, it would be meaningless. So he didn't want to bicker. It was better to seize the time to strengthen his own power. Defeating Ling Feng in one fell swoop at the grand competition will be far more glorious than merely winning a war of words now. Hee, brother Ling Feng, that little beggar seems to look down on you a lot. Ling Yu said with a playful smile, her words carrying a hint of instigation. Don't worry, on the day of the grand competition, I'll take care of him as well. Ling Feng was actually very disdainful of Ling Xiao's words. In his heart, Ling Xiao was merely an appetizer, good for a warm-up, and not worthy of being his opponent at all. With only half a month at most, could Ling Xiao truly advance to the martial Vane third level? Even if he could, among the elite hall alone, there would be no fewer than 60 or 70 disciples at the martial Vane third level. He, Ling Feng, could only rank 10th in the elite hall. Not to mention, above the elite hall was the talent hall, where there were even more monstrous disciples. His, Ling Feng's, opponents were the top 10 of the elite hall, and those monsters from the talent hall. His goal was to enter the talent hall from the elite hall. and not to compete with an unranked disciple who couldn't even enter the elite hall. Perhaps Brother Ling Feng won't even get the chance. By then, I'll make him kneel and beg for mercy. Ling Yu giggled, and then this handsome couple left the martial arts library amidst the envious and jealous gazes of the crowd. Ling Xiao had already entered the martial arts library, but he was somewhat nervous. After all, it was his first time. The first floor of the martial arts library had only one room and no books. This was where the martial arts library's guard resided. Guard were usually the family's top experts, or elders, or the family head sons, and so on. The middle-aged man on duty today was about 35 years old. Ling Xiao, you're quite something. No wonder you could injure my son. It turns out you had a breakthrough. That's right, the person on duty today was Ling Chong's father, the Ling family head's ninth son, known as Ninth Master. Ninth Master, this disciple has come today to observe martial arts. Ling Xiao knew Ninth Master was very strong, terrifyingly strong, definitely above the martial vein 4th level, because Ninth Master, as displayed by the mountain and river martial soul, showed a red warning, even without detailed data. It indicated that the power difference was too great, and there was no possibility of victory at all. However, he remained neither humble nor arrogant, because he knew that as long as he was a Ling family disciple, Ninth Master would not dare to easily kill him. But if he were truly expelled, he would definitely die a miserable death. So he had to work hard, strive to stay. This was the way to save his life. Good kid, you've got guts. Ninth Master sneered. I won't mince words. I won't let the matter of you injuring my son go. For now, you are still a Ling family disciple, so it's not convenient for me to act, but you'd best not get expelled, otherwise you'll surely die. This was an absolutely undisguised threat. This disciple understands. Ling Xiao nodded in response. He naturally understood this principle. Good that you understand. You are an external disciple who entered through the assessment, so your treatment is naturally not as good as that of native disciples. There are some things I need to tell you in advance, lest you break the rules. Ninth Master, finding that he hadn't scared Ling Xiao, showed a playful smile and then spoke. Ling Xiao felt a slight anger in his heart upon hearing this. There were no such rules in the family. This Ninth Master was clearly using his position for personal revenge. But he had no choice. With insufficient power, he could only endure. Bargaining was meaningless and would only make him a laughingstock. Ninth Master, please speak. He said indifferently. Ninth Master chuckled. As an external disciple, you can only enter the 2nd floor and choose a maximum of 2 martial arts, intermediate or low grade, without restriction. Whether you can choose an intermediate martial art depends entirely on your discernment and fortune. You have 1 hour to choose, and once chosen, you can hold them for 20 days. Have you understood clearly? Upon hearing this, Ling Xiao was filled with indignation. He had inquired beforehand. Any Ling family disciple, whether external or native, could choose at least 4 martial arts at a time, with 3 hours to choose, and could take them out to cultivate for up to 4 months. The disparity was simply too great. But despite his anger, he was helpless. He could only grit his teeth and nod. This disciple understands. He certainly understood that the injustice he suffered today would surely be repaid tenfold, 100-fold, in the future. Good that you understand. Go quickly. Ninth Master's mouth curled into a sneer. Even when beating a dog, one must consider its owner. You dare to injure my son. Although I can't kill you due to family rules, forcing you out of the Ling family would allow me to deal with you as I please. Ling Xiao took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his heart, and stepped onto the stairs, heading to the 2nd floor. The martial arts library was the repository of the Ling family's martial art classics, a vital area of the Ling family. This represented the accumulation and glory of a great family. Ordinary small families simply did not have such a place. This was the difference. The larger and more profound a family's heritage, the more martial art classics it would possess, and the higher their quality. The Ling family's martial arts library was divided into 4 floors. The 1st floor was where the guards resided. The 2nd floor was where basic martial arts, low-grade martial arts, and intermediate martial arts were stored. Naturally, low-grade martial arts accounted for the vast majority. Basic martial arts were also numerous, and intermediate martial arts were said to be only a mere 20 types, making the chance of selecting one very low. The 3rd floor had a large number of intermediate martial arts, a certain number of advanced martial arts, and a small number of top-tier martial arts. To enter the 3rd floor of the martial arts library, one had to be at least a martial apprentice of the martial vein 4th level to be qualified. The 4th floor was said to mostly contain top-tier martial arts, as well as some confidential documents of the Ling family, and a few martial art classics rumored to have transcended the mundane world. Of course, these were all just rumors among disciples. Whether they were true was hard to say. Naturally, rules are made by people. If you're a native disciple, have backing or support, or possess extraordinary talent, then many rules can actually be flexible for you. This was also why Ling Xiao could learn advanced martial arts, while Ling Xiao could only learn basic martial arts. For Ling Xiao, this opportunity was truly rare. He had to choose carefully, trying his best to select intermediate martial arts. When he entered the second floor, Ling Xiao noticed that there were already people inside. However, no one even looked up at him. Although these people had 3 hours to choose, selecting an intermediate martial art from thousands of martial arts was not an easy task. No one wanted to waste time. Ling Xiao naturally didn't want to either, because his time was even more precious than theirs, with only 1 hour. So he only paused for a moment, then shifted his gaze to the bookshelves. As one of the 4 great families of Tianfeng City, the Ling family indeed had a profound heritage. To go through thousands of martial arts one by one would probably take 3 or 4 hours. That fellow, ninth master, clearly intended to make things difficult for me. Crushing palm, blazing fire fist, Tianfeng 13 swords, swift wind, chasing leaf steps, red sun art. Starting from the first book on the first shelf, Ling Xiao was dazzled. And based on just a few pages of content, it was really difficult to distinguish the grade of these martial art classics. It was too difficult. Was there some trick to it? Chapter 8. The Magical Use of Martial Soul. Ling Xiao flipped through the summaries of several books, hoping to find some clues. Crushing palm. A fierce palm technique, powerful as a mountain, relying on strength to win. Requires a strength of 300 caddies to cultivate. Blazing fire fist can condense true chi, unleashing a powerful fist force like a raging fire. Its instant burst is terrifying. If it reaches the protective aura stage, it can even unleash blazing fire protective aura. Only male martial artists can cultivate it. Female martial artists are prone to injury. Swift wind chasing leaves steps. Once mastered, it can greatly increase movement speed. As the saying goes, among all martial arts, speed is paramount, which shows its power. Generally, this cultivation technique is more suitable for slender individuals to cultivate, especially slim women, who achieve the best results. Iron garment skill. A defensive external cultivation technique. Once mastered, it can block sword and saber attacks and greatly reduce body damage. This cultivation technique requires a firm will to master. Otherwise, it is easy to give up halfway. They all sound so powerful. I want to practice every single one, but unfortunately, I can only choose 2. What a headache. Although he didn't discover the rank of these martial arts from their summaries, seeing the introductions still made Ling Xiao incredibly excited. As someone who found it difficult to even obtain low-rank martial arts, almost every one of these martial arts secret manuals made him drool. Damn Ninth Master Ling, everyone else can take out 4 books, but I can only take 2. While it's true that being too greedy isn't good, not every martial art needs to be cultivated to great perfection. For example, with iron garment skill, most people only need to cultivate it enough to enhance their physical defense. With 1 or 2 core cultivation techniques, and others as auxiliary, one can greatly enhance their strength. What a pity. What a pity, I can only choose 2. If I could choose more, it would be great. I now possess the mountain and river martial soul, and my cultivation will improve very quickly. Even cultivating several martial arts at once shouldn't be a problem. Suddenly, Ling Xiao thought of something. The mountain and river martial soul can analyze and practice martial arts. So, is it possible for it to practice the martial arts within the martial arts secret manuals? When he first entered the martial arts library, he didn't activate his mountain and river martial soul for fear that Ninth Master Ling would notice something amiss. The method for activating and deactivating it is very simple. It only requires the activation of true chi, which is basically similar to using a martial skill. Thinking of this, he quickly activated his mountain and river martial soul. At that instant, a patch of clouds on the mountain and river diagram actually parted, and another building appeared in the village. The appearance of that building was very similar to the Ling family's martial arts library, only it was a bit shorter and had only 1 floor. The most miraculous thing was that when Ling Xiao extended his consciousness into it, he actually found that all the martial arts secret manuals he had previously seen had appeared in the library room within this mountain and river diagram. When he opened a book to examine it, a figure would immediately appear on the mountain and river diagram, his own figure, and what he was practicing was precisely the martial art he was reading. This is too miraculous. Ling Xiao was shocked, but this was accompanied by intense ecstasy. He never expected the mountain and river martial soul to have such an effect. Doesn't that mean he can acquire all the martial arts secret manuals on this second floor? Even if he doesn't practice them, he can give them to others to practice later, or even sell them for money. He didn't think doing so was betraying the Ling family. After all, the Ling family people had never considered Ling Xiao one of their own. Even Ninth Master Ling had openly threatened to kill him, so why should he keep the Ling family secrets? Furthermore, the best secret manuals on this second floor were only intermediate martial arts, which could probably be found elsewhere. Only the secret manuals on the fourth floor of the martial arts library were likely the foundation of the Ling family. Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated and sped up, beginning to flip through the martial arts secret manuals. He only looked at the summary of each book before throwing it back on a bookshelf. To read the summaries of nearly 10,000 books in 1 hour was no easy feat. He had to speed up. You, Ninth Master Ling, restricted me to only taking out 2 books, right? I'll steal all the secret manuals here and infuriate you to death. Speed up. Faster. A never-before-seen look of madness appeared on Ling Xiao's face. Initially, every time he flipped through a book, he would confirm if there was a copy in the library room within the mountain and river diagram, but later, he became too lazy to verify. Because there was no need to verify, he could feel it in his heart every time a new book was added to the library room. Ha! So refreshing. So refreshing. Mountain and river martial soul. What kind of martial soul is this to be so powerful? As Ling Xiao flipped through the martial arts secret manuals, he couldn't help but laugh out loud, unable to contain his delight. This action caused the disciple who were reading to involuntarily focus their attention on him. Is this kid sick? Yeah, I've never seen anyone choose books like this. Just a bumpkin. Let's ignore him and hurry up with our own business. 1 hour, neither long nor short. By the time Ling Xiao had copied almost all of the more than 9,000 secret manuals on the second floor of the martial arts library, only 15 minutes remained. The reason he hadn't left yet was primarily because several books were still in the hands of Ling family disciple and hadn't been put down, so he hadn't had a chance to look at them yet. It's worth mentioning that while the martial arts secret manuals in the Ling family's martial arts library were haphazardly placed, the situation changed once they entered the mountain and river diagram. They were neatly categorized and arranged there, and a person even appeared out of nowhere to clean the place. Palm techniques, saber techniques, sword techniques, internal skill mind cultivation techniques, movement techniques, body strengthening cultivation techniques, and so on. All were placed on different bookshelves. Not only that, intermediate martial arts, low-rank martial arts, and basic martial arts were also arranged in descending order of rank, with labels indicating their respective ranks. This situation left Ling Xiao wide-eyed and excited. This library room within his mountain and river diagram was simply more amazing than the Ling family's martial arts library. Time was running out, but Ling Xiao couldn't snatch books from the Ling family's disciple. After all, his current strength couldn't compare to theirs. So he could only continue to wander around the second floor, hoping to find any secret manuals he might have missed. He had been too excited earlier, so it was indeed possible he had overlooked something. What's that? Ling Xiao suddenly noticed 2 paintings hanging at the entrance of the second floor. One painting depicted a monster with a bull's head and human body, holding a giant axe, while the other painting showed a monkey-headed fellow holding a stick. The most miraculous thing was that the painting of the bull-headed human also had 3 characters, bull, demon skill, and the painting of the monkey-headed fellow also had 3 characters, soaring cloud steps. Could these 2 paintings also be martial arts secret manuals? Thinking this, Ling Xiao reached out his hand towards one of the paintings. Stop. However, before he could touch the painting, he was stopped by a disciple from the Ling family's main branch. He was at the martial vein 3rd level of cultivation, stronger than Ling Xiao. You all go notify Master Jiu that someone has dared to touch the guardian paintings. That disciple said to another disciple. The disciple quickly ran down, and when he came back up, 9th Master Ling had also arrived. Master Jiu, this child dared to touch the guardian paintings. No need to worry. No need to worry. The guardian paintings are indeed martial art secret manuals of the second floor. Let him touch them. These 2 guardian paintings look ordinary, but they actually have restrictions. 9th Master Ling said with a smile. Ling Xiao, if you have the ability, take the martial arts secret manuals placed behind them. Chapter 9 2 Miracles. 9th Master Ling looked at Ling Xiao with a hint of disdain. The reason he agreed to let Ling Xiao touch the 2 town paintings was naturally for a reason. These 2 town paintings were left behind by the Ling family's old ancestor, said to suppress 2 miraculous cultivation techniques. These 2 miraculous cultivation techniques were extremely difficult for any martial artist to cultivate, but once successfully cultivated, they would benefit one for life. However, to obtain these 2 miraculous cultivation techniques, one must first break the restriction on the town paintings. The Ling family's old ancestor did not state the specific reason for doing so, only saying that it was to wait for someone destined. However, for hundreds of years, countless people have tried to retrieve the 2 miraculous cultivation techniques from the town paintings, but all ultimately failed. This even included the current powerful Ling family patriarch. Of course, 9th Master Ling had also tried. He really wanted to get these 2 miraculous cultivation techniques for his son, Ling Xiao, to learn. It was a pity that he also failed. Because of this, He simply did not believe Ling Xiao could succeed. However, the next moment, Ninth Master Ling's eyes nearly popped out. Ling Xiao effortlessly retrieved 2 cultivation techniques from the 2 paintings with almost no effort at all. One was the Bull Demon skill, and the other was the Soaring Cloud Steps. Hand them over. After the shock, Ninth Master Ling quickly revealed a look of greed. Ninth Master, you just said that if I retrieve these 2 books, I could take them, right? Ling Xiao frowned, but quickly glanced at the summaries of the 2 books and copied them into the mountain and river diagram. Because he knew that an arm could not twist a thigh, these books would eventually be snatched by Ninth Master Ling, so he absolutely could not suffer a loss. Didn't you hear me tell you to hand them over? Suddenly, Ninth Master Ling waved his hand, and a powerful force directly sent Ling Xiao flying, and the 2 cultivation techniques also fell into Ninth Master Ling's hand. Ah, it's truly like searching for something far and wide, only to find it effortlessly. Ninth Master Ling laughed wildly, then raised his hand again, casually took 2 cultivation techniques from the bookshelf, and threw them to Ling Xiao. Kid, don't be unconvinced. These 2 miraculous cultivation techniques are not for you to obtain. The 2 cultivation techniques I chose for you are intermediate cultivation techniques. Take them back and cultivate them well. You won't suffer a loss. Ha ha! Ninth Master Ling laughed loudly, eagerly flipping through the 2 miraculous cultivation techniques to read them. Although Ling Xiao coughed up blood from the impact, he felt somewhat fortunate in his heart, because the 2 miraculous cultivation techniques had already been copied. He would not forget today's humiliation. Ninth Master Ling, remember this, one day, I, Ling Xiao, will make you suffer 100-fold humiliation. Ling Xiao said nothing, picked up the 2 cultivation techniques Ninth Master Ling had thrown on the ground, and left. Coincidentally, those 2 cultivation techniques were precisely the ones he hadn't had time to copy before. Why not take them if they're free? Ha ha! How can that beggar cultivate the Ling family's miraculous cultivation techniques? What a joke! Ninth Master Ling felt extremely pleased seeing Ling Xiao obediently leave. He read the summaries of the 2 miraculous cultivation techniques, and they were indeed astonishing. It was just a pity that these 2 miraculous cultivation techniques had a condition. They could only be cultivated by martial artists in the awakening stage, meaning that if one exceeded the martial vein 3rd level, they could not cultivate them unless they crippled their own cultivation. But who would be that foolish? He could only take these miraculous cultivation techniques back for his son, Ling Qiao, to cultivate. Ling Xiao left the martial arts library somewhat disheveled, being pointed at and mocked along the way. Because what happened in the martial arts library had already been exaggerated and altered by those Ling family disciples and spread out. It had become a story of Ling Xiao attempting to steal martial art from the martial arts library, only to be seen through by Ninth Master Ling's wisdom, eye, and taught a lesson. Ling Xiao was unaware of this, but he also understood that any explanation now would be useless. The only chance to prove his innocence was to surpass Ninth Master Ling in strength. He also believed that Ninth Master Ling would not blow things out of proportion, otherwise the truth would eventually be known, and he would lose face. After all, the Ling family was not a monolith, and this Ninth Master Ling still had to consider some things. Upon returning home, Ling Xiao entered his room and took out the Soaring Cloud Steps to read. Soaring Cloud Steps, a growth-type movement cultivation technique, currently in the Soaring Cloud Step stage. Each time it grows, the cultivation technique's name will change, and the required conditions will also change, but the ultimate goal remains the same. After cultivating, it can make a martial artist as light as a swallow, treading on clouds to chase the moon, controlling mist. If it can advance to the highest stage, one can even ride the clouds and mist, proudly laughing in the 9 heavens. This movement cultivation technique can only be cultivated from the awakening stage. Otherwise, the foundation will be unstable, and it cannot succeed. Even in the Soaring Cloud Step stage, if cultivated to great perfection, one can temporarily hover in the air and fight on clouds for a certain period. In this stage, within the protective aura realm, which is below the martial vein 6th level, it is almost an invincible movement cultivation technique. Upon seeing this, all the pain on Ling Xiao's body disappeared, replaced by excitement. An invincible movement cultivation technique below the protective aura stage. Didn't this mean that he wouldn't need to change movement cultivation techniques even after cultivating to the martial vein 6th level? And this was only the Soaring Cloud Step stage? This cultivation technique could grow, temporarily hovering in the air and even fighting on cloud for a certain period, such a movement cultivation technique. Even if Ling Xiao was unlearned, he was still a disciple of the Ling family, and he had truly never heard of it. He could at least be sure that there was absolutely no such thing among intermediate movement cultivation techniques. He wasn't sure about advanced movement cultivation techniques, but he guessed they were rare, as there were experts in the Ling family who cultivated advanced movement cultivation techniques, and he hadn't seen any of them able to fight on clouds. Truly worthy of being a miraculous cultivation technique. But why would the Ling family's old ancestors suppress such a good movement cultivation technique with a painting instead of letting the Ling family disciples cultivate it? Holding this confusion, Ling Xiao continued to read, and sure enough, when he turned to the last page, he saw a line of handwritten text. This miraculous cultivation technique can only be successfully cultivated by those who awaken a martial soul. If ordinary martial artists cultivate it, although there will be some effect, and most it will only be an intermediate movement cultivation technique, unremarkable, and the difficulty of cultivation is too great, which instead affects progress, hence it is restricted. It seems this Ling family old ancestor should also know about martial soul, and possibly even seen people who have awakened a martial soul. Could it be that martial soul has not become extinct? It's just that too few people awaken a martial soul nowadays, so it's basically like being extinct? Ha ha ha. Ha ha. Ling Xiao couldn't help but laugh wildly in his room. Ninth Master Ling. Oh, Ninth Master Ling, you shamelessly snatched 2 miraculous cultivation techniques from my hands, disregarding your own face, but in the end, it was all for naught. Well then, let me teach your son a lesson with this miraculous cultivation technique at the annual grand competition. Besides that, this soaring cloud steps also had a somewhat frustrating cultivation method. It required that an intermediate movement cultivation technique must reach the great perfection state before the soaring cloud steps could be activated step by step. The soaring cloud steps had a total of 9 steps, ultimately reaching great perfection. In other words, this thing had no cultivation method, improved by accumulating experience through other movement cultivation techniques. Seeing this, he quickly went to check the bull demon skill and found an interesting thing. The soaring cloud steps pursued elegance and speed. It was a movement cultivation technique. However, the bull demon skill pursued power and dominance. It was the application of martial skill. Not only that, but the bull demon skill was also a growth-type martial art, but unlike the soaring cloud steps, which grew by accumulating experience, the bull demon skill grew by devouring. It didn't devour true chi, nor did it devour people, but rather devoured cultivation experience. Chapter 10 begins to practice. Accumulating experience means the original cultivation technique won't disappear, but devouring experience means the original cultivation technique will directly disappear and cannot be cultivated again, nor can it be successfully cultivated even if attempted. However, the characteristics of the cultivation technique will be absorbed by the bull demon skill. Fortunately, this devouring isn't passive but active, meaning it's elective. Otherwise, Ling Xiao wouldn't dare to cultivate it. Both unique cultivation techniques are growth-oriented and, when cultivated to their highest stages, are heaven-defying. Therefore, he definitely needs to cultivate them, but this method is a bit strange, so Ling Xiao can only cultivate other martial arts first. Luckily, he possesses the mountain and river martial soul, which can replicate martial arts, and he hasn't stolen few of them from the Ling family's martial arts library. Now, he can pick a few to start cultivating. Seeing the secret manuals in the mountain and river diagrams library house, Ling Xiao immediately started excitedly rolling around on the bed. Tianfeng City, where they are located, belongs to the North Han Kingdom. According to market price, a basic martial art can be sold for 10 silver taels, an elementary martial art can be sold for 1,000 silver taels, and an intermediate martial art can go as high as 100,000 silver taels. Why can't a poor person like Ling Xiao even afford basic martial arts? Because he can't save 10 silver taels in his entire life. Going all out, Ling Xiao prepared to sell some basic martial arts, at least enough to ensure his grandfather's ribs were healed. Since the Ling family was unkind, he wouldn't be blamed for being unjust. He hadn't been living in the Ling family for free this past year. He had to practice martial arts and do chores, yet he didn't receive a single silver coin, only some rations. And he wasn't even full. He genuinely had no respect for such a Ling family. So, secretly selling martial arts secret manuals was no big deal. Of course, for safety, he still planned to start with basic martial arts, as there were too many of them, and not only the Ling family had them, so it would be hard to be discovered. Thinking of this, he hurried out the door and went to the auction house in Tianfeng City. Generally speaking, basic martial arts only need to be consigned to the auction house. If sold, the auction house will directly transfer the silver to your bank account. No need to wait there every day. So, after Ling Xiao placed 10 basic martial arts at the auction house, he returned to the Ling family. Healing his grandfather was important, but improving his strength was equally important. If his strength wasn't enough, his grandfather's injury would surely happen again. Upon returning to his room, Ling Xiao began to choose from over 9,000 martial arts. Although too much can be indigestible, martial arts are somewhat special. Many martial arts can complement each other, not only not hindering each other, but also accelerating the cultivation progress. So he definitely had to choose several to combine and cultivate. Moreover, to improve soaring cloud steps and to feed bull demon skill, he had to constantly cultivate more martial arts. With the mountain and river diagram suggestion, the selection time became much shorter. If he had to choose himself, it might take a day and a night. However, under the mountain and river diagram suggestion, he only took less than a quarter of an hour to select 5 martial arts. This was considered a set of martial arts. The mountain and river diagram even gave this set a name, Soul of the Fist. Cultivating these 5 martial arts simultaneously could increase cultivation speed by 1 to 3/10 and true chi accumulation speed by 1 to 3/10. When using fist martial skills, the power could be increased by 1 to 2 times. The 5 martial arts of Soul of the Fist were respectively Fierce Tiger Descends the Mountain Steps, Falling Star Fist, Chi Burst Art, Red Sun Art, and Chi Recovery Art. In fact, a careful analysis would reveal that these 5 martial arts were all centered around Falling Star Fist, with the other 4 martial arts being entirely supplementary. Intermediate movement technique Fierce Tiger Descends the Mountain Steps is a powerful movement technique. When performed, every time one charges forward a certain distance, strength, aura, and speed all increase, like a fierce tiger descending a mountain. Of course, this intermediate movement technique will still serve soaring cloud steps in the future. Intermediate internal skill mind cultivation technique Red Sun Art is a cultivation technique that increases true chi. Crucially, when performing martial skills, it can add the effect of blazing fire burns, also increasing the power of fist techniques. Intermediate secret manuals Chi Recovery Art and Chi Burst Art are a secret manual for restoring true chi and a secret manual for instantly bursting true chi, respectively. The latter can maximize the power of Falling Star Fist in an instant, but its drawback is excessive true chi consumption. And the former, Chi Recovery Art, can greatly compensate for this flaw. This is why Ling Xiao chose these 5 martial arts. As for why Falling Star Fist was chosen among the fist techniques, the reason is simple. This set of fist techniques has the greatest power among intermediate martial arts, and Ling Xiao likes wide open, explosive combat. Its power is even comparable to some advanced martial arts, but its drawback, like Chi Burst Art, is excessive consumption, so martial artists in the awakening realm generally don't like to choose it. But Ling Xiao is different. Not only is his true chi thicker than martial artists of similar strength due to the mountain and river martial soul, but he also specifically chose Chi Recovery Art to compensate for the flaw. Other martial artists, even geniuses, cultivating 3 martial arts simultaneously is already heaven-defying, but he can rely on the mountain and river martial soul's analysis and demonstration effects. He can completely cultivate 5 martial arts simultaneously, and there are 5 complementary martial arts. This is the advantage. From now on, Ling Xiao is no longer that little beggar who everyone could bully. His martial art Dao will be smooth sailing. After selecting the Soul of the Fist martial arts set, Ling Xiao began to cultivate. Of course, while it's called simultaneous cultivation, he is still only one person, so he still has to follow a sequence. It's just that the cultivation speed of each martial art is faster than others. He first chose to cultivate Red Sun Art. The reason is simple. Red Sun Art can increase true chi and strengthen the body. This is crucial for both movement techniques and martial skills, as the foundation of a martial artist is true chi. Even the classification of martial artist realms is actually based on different stages of true chi. Ling Xiao closed his eyes and then cultivated according to the content of Red Sun Art. True chi circulated within his body, and what excited him was that whenever he encountered blockages or trouble, the mountain and river martial soul would automatically operate and help solve the problem, providing the correct true chi circulation path. In this way, it was basically impossible for Ling Xiao to experience chi deviation, and there were absolutely no so-called bottlenecks in cultivating cultivation techniques. All the way was a green light, unobstructed. His talent was not bad to begin with, but he was not as supremely talented as he was now. All of this originated from the special effects of the mountain and river martial soul. This made Ling Xiao even more focused on and interested in the mountain and river martial soul. Martial souls were already very mysterious, and the mountain and river martial soul was clearly more mysterious than most martial souls. Just how miraculous was it? Ling Xiao was eager to know. However, to know this secret, his current strength was clearly insufficient. And cultivation was the key to unlocking the secrets of the mountain and river diagram. Because while cultivating Red Sun Art, he could clearly feel that the mountain and river diagram was also undergoing some wonderful changes. Of course, the continuous disappearance of the clouds should be the most obvious. At this time, another place appeared in the small village of the mountain and river diagram. It was an altar, and inside the altar was not a statue, but a ball of fire. A brilliant flame. Chapter 11. Rapid progress. After only 1 hour of cultivation, Ling Fei's red sun art actually broke through the first level. He could feel that the true qi in his body was significantly thicker, and his body expelled waste fluid formed by the body's transformation. It was black and somewhat foul-smelling. Although his strength had not increased, both his true qi and the toughness of his meridians had improved, at least by about 2 to 3/10. To actually break through the first level of red sun art in just 1 hour, this cultivation speed is truly astonishing. Ling Fei was incredibly excited. This internal skill mind cultivation technique only had 3 levels. After cultivating to the great perfection of the 3rd level, his attacks could contain the qi of flames. He might even be able to form a flame protective aura. One must know that protective aura could only be mastered by martial artists at the martial vein 4th level and above. The greatest advantage of this martial art was precisely this point. However, because it was very difficult to cultivate to great perfection, there were not many cultivators. After all, wasting this time on one cultivation technique was not as good as diligently improving one's strength. Once one reached the martial vein 4th level, true qi would automatically transform into protective aura. But Ling Fei's idea was different. If he could condense protective aura during the awakening stage, his combat power would definitely increase significantly. After cultivating red sun art for another hour and stabilizing it at the 1st level, Ling Fei turned to cultivate other martial arts. According to the guidance of the mountain and river martial soul, these 5 martial arts had to be synchronized to achieve a multiplier effect. That is to say, you should not blindly focus on improving one, but rather cultivate all 5 martial arts to the 1st level first, and then cycle through them for improvement. This way, the effect is best. Next, he chose the Falling Star Fist. This was a martial skill, a means of attack, and he had to learn it. Just as the mountain and river martial soul described, after learning the red sun art, the cultivation of the Falling Star Fist became very easy. This set of boxing techniques had a total of 9 moves. The moves were very simple, with only 9 variations in total. It pursued power, not speed, nor variations. Ling Fei liked it this way because it was easier to practice. In just 2 hours, Ling Fei completely mastered the Falling Star Fist from the 1st to the 6th move. Only the last 3 moves were still a bit difficult. However, he did not persist, but instead turned to cultivate the Qi Burst Art. This was a secret technique with only 1 stage in total. Its function was also very simple. It could instantly condense a large amount of true Qi onto a martial skill and unleash it. Of course, the amount of burst could be controlled, 60%, 70%, or even 100%. It was entirely a desperate measure. Although he really wanted to try the power of the Falling Star Fist under the Qi Burst Art right now, Ling Fei still held back. To sustain combat, he also had to master the Qi Recovery Art. The Qi Recovery Art, like the Qi Burst Art, was also a secret technique. As long as one grasped the knack, it was very easy to cultivate, and it also had only 1 level. With the analysis of the mountain and river martial soul, he finished it in just 1 hour. The Qi Recovery Art had 2 effects. One was to continuously restore true Qi anytime, anywhere, though this speed would be relatively slow. The other was that one could choose to meditate on the spot, which would allow for almost complete recovery within 15 minutes. Of course, this was limited to the awakening stage, meaning martial artists below the martial vein 3rd level. The higher the cultivation, the slower the complete recovery would naturally be, as the true Qi reserves increased. The cultivation of the 1st level of the Fierce Tiger descends the mountain steps was also relatively simple, mainly focusing on an aura. With the previous foundation, he simply chose to cultivate this movement technique while in a Qi burst state, and broke through the 1st level in just 15 minutes. Afterward, it took 15 minutes to recover Qi. Then he returned to the Red Sun Art, once again bursting Qi to cultivate, and the 2nd level was easily broke through. Ling Fei now really wanted to find someone to spar with. With the cooperation of the Fist of Soul set of cultivation techniques, he believed that even against a martial artist at the martial vein 3rd level, he would absolutely not be intimidated. He couldn't say he would definitely win, but he would definitely not lose, unless the opponent also had a special cultivation technique. With excitement in his heart, Ling Fei also intensified his cultivation. Except for going out to eat, he completely locked himself in his room for the rest of the time. 2 days later, Ling Fei's Red Sun Art was close to the great perfection of the 3rd level. He had comprehended the 7th move of the Falling Star Fist, and he had basically mastered all 9 moves and 108 variations of the Fierce Tiger descends the mountain steps. The problem was that the room was too small to move around freely. To try out the Fierce Tiger descends the mountain steps, he would have to go to a more spacious place. The same applied to the Falling Star Fist. He needed to engage in actual combat. If he just practiced by himself, it would be a bit difficult to fully comprehend the true meaning of the martial skill. At this time, his martial artist realm had also basically approached the peak of the martial vein second level, only a hair's breadth away from breakthrough. What he needed, perhaps, was truly just a battle. But before that, he needed to go to the city's auction house first. He wondered if those 10 basic martial arts had been sold. If they had been sold, it would be time to hire a doctor for his grandfather, and then continue to anonymously sell the remaining basic martial arts. Soon, Ling Fei arrived at the auction house. The people at the auction house told him that all 10 basic martial arts had been sold, for a total of 100 taels of silver. However, after deducting service fees, 90 taels of silver remained. All of it had already been transferred into his bank account. Ling Fei was quite satisfied with this. The bank was next door, and Ling Fei checked. Indeed, it was 90 taels of silver. So he left another 10 basic martial arts at the auction house. The people at the auction house didn't pay much attention, as they were just basic martial arts, and they had seen many of them. With the silver, Ling Fei went to hire a doctor specializing in bone injuries, who knew that as soon as he reached the side gate of the Ling family, he saw a group of people practicing light body movement techniques there. Although the training ground could also be used for practice, the outside had more trees and many roof beams, making the terrain complex and more suitable for the display of light body cultivation techniques. Whoosh! A figure directly shot up a tree, moving nimbly like a spiritual ape, then landed back on the ground. What excellent movement technique! Senior brother Ling Fei's light body cultivation technique is the best in the elite hall, unmatched. Yes, even if he is slightly lacking in other areas, just with his movement technique, he can make many peers very uncomfortable. Isn't that right? In martial arts, speed is king. With this movement technique and speed, senior brother Ling Fei might even become the #1 in the elite hall in this annual competition. A group of people below were cheering continuously. I wonder how my fierce tiger descends the mountain steps is. How does it compare to this Ling Fei? This scene truly made Ling Fei's heart itch. Ling Fei's light body cultivation technique was indeed formidable. He had to admit that, but he was also a bit unconvinced. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Perhaps encouraged by those people, Ling Fei deliberately changed directions several times in the air, his movements very graceful. However, perhaps due to insufficient stamina, he nearly fell at the end. Fortunately, he saw Ling Fei, and so he tried to step on Ling Fei's shoulder to avoid losing face. Ling Fei had no grudge against Ling Fei, but he was unwilling to let him step on his shoulder, so he simply raised his foot and kicked it skyward, giving Ling Fei a place to step. Ling Fei landed gracefully, but there was a hint of anger on his face. Senior brother Ling is really amazing. He can even do that, just like a flying swallow. They did not realize that Ling Fei had just been too complacent and almost made a fool of himself, so they still praised him desperately. Chapter 12. Too lucky? Ling Xiao noticed Ling Fei's expression and couldn't help but shake his head. These disciples of the family were all arrogant and narrow-minded. He could step on your shoulders casually, but if you used your foot to help him, he would get angry. Too lazy to bother with Ling Fei, he was in a hurry to get the doctor to examine his grandfather's injuries. Who knew that as soon as he took a step, a white shadow suddenly flashed, and the medicine box in the doctor's hand had disappeared. It had been hung on a tree branch over 10 meters high by Ling Fei. What are you doing? Ling Xiao asked with a frown. Nothing, just want to test your movement technique. Ling Fei said calmly, as if he had just done something insignificant. Who is that person? Several disciples couldn't help but look at Ling Xiao, all a little confused. Of course, some of them knew Ling Xiao. Him? He used to be a beggar, and he entered our Ling family a year ago through the family's grand examination. In this year, his strength has only been at the martial vein first level, and he even offended Ling Chong and Ling Feng, 2 disciples from the elite hall. Even Ling Yu, who was initially considerate to him, has now become senior brother Ling Feng's woman. I've also heard of this fellow. Senior brother Ling Chong let him off, but he shamelessly used despicable means to sneak attack him. How shameless! But he seems to have already advanced to the martial vein second level. A few days ago, he went to the martial arts library and was punished for trying to steal a book. Such a person truly doesn't deserve to be a Ling family disciple. No wonder senior brother Ling Fei wants to tease him. I don't think this medicine box can be taken down today. He probably doesn't know movement technique. Those Ling family disciples, who were flattering Ling Fei like lackeys, were now evaluating Ling Xiao with mocking and disdainful tones, as if they were somehow superior. I was just playing with him. You all saw just now he actually tried to attack me. Ling Fei shamelessly twisted the facts, attempting to provide a reasonable explanation for his actions. Ling Xiao frowned deeply. It was indeed still like this. Without strength, one could only be bullied everywhere. Ling Chong, Ling Feng, Ling Fei, Ling Yu. If he remained a trash at the martial vein first level, then there would likely be even more people bullying him in the future. Forget it. It just so happened that today he needed to test the power of the fierce tiger descending the mountain steps. Ignoring Ling Fei and the others, he looked at the medicine box hanging on the tree branch 10 meters high, and suddenly activated his true chi, unleashing the fierce tiger descending the mountain steps. Bang! Oh my goodness! Ling Xiao didn't expect to use too much force this time, and actually slammed his head into the tree. Indeed, it was a bit difficult to control when using such a powerful movement technique for the first time. Next time, he would have to hold back a little. Ha ha ha, what a fool! Ling Fei and the others burst into laughter, some even laughing so hard they squatted on the ground, tears streaming down their faces. Ling Xiao didn't care. There's a first time for everything. He used too much force just now, so this time he would just hold back a little. With the mountain and river martial soul activated, a perfectly controlled stream of true chi surged into his legs, and the fierce tiger descending the mountain steps suddenly unfolded. Ling Xiao was like a fierce tiger emerging from the mountain, roaring as he pounced towards the tree trunk. This time, he successfully leaped onto the tree, but he was still a hair's breadth away from the medicine box. However, this time, the laughter abruptly froze, and everyone was dumbfounded. Ling Fei was also greatly surprised. He could tell that Ling Xiao's movement technique was not bad. Such a movement technique, even some disciples in the elite hall might not be able to match it. It's nothing, senior brother Ling Fei. This kid hasn't even figured it out himself. That's right. Look at his confused expression. He must have just gotten lucky, purely by chance. Exactly, even if he obtained a lightness cultivation technique from the martial arts library, it's only been a few days. How could he have learned it? That was just him jumping higher due to the activation of true chi. Although their faces were grim, these people could always find reasons to comfort themselves. However, what followed left them with no excuses. Only a low shout was heard, and Ling Xiao, like a nimble fierce tiger or a clever mountain cat, stepped on the tree trunk, his body lightly floating up. Then he grabbed the medicine box and floated back down. He landed steadily on the ground. At this point, those people could no longer find reasons to comfort themselves. Such a movement technique, even Ling Fei might not be able to match it. Intermediate movement techniques are indeed powerful. I wonder how the soaring cloud steps compares to the fierce tiger descending the mountain steps. I'll try to cultivate the soaring cloud steps when I get back. Ling Xiao felt extremely pleased, not only because he had struck a blow against those who slandered him, but more importantly, he was now increasingly confident about the future. Is this guy a genius? That's right, to go from not knowing movement technique to being so proficient in just a few days, this is too outrageous. Everyone who had come back to their senses was somewhat unconvinced. Some of them had been practicing movement technique for 1 or 2 years and still couldn't compare to Ling Xiao just now. Naturally, they felt uncomfortable. Let's go, doctor. My grandfather is still waiting to be examined. The doctor was also a bit stunned and only came back to his senses when Ling Xiao reminded him. Young master, your movement technique truly opened this old man's eyes. The doctor was just an ordinary person, so at this moment, he already considered Ling Xiao to be a young master of the Ling family. Otherwise, how could he possess such excellent skill? Young master? You fool, this guy is just a little beggar. He just got lucky just now. If you're capable, do it again. Exactly, if he does it again, he'll definitely be exposed. Those disciples shouted loudly, clearly unwilling to have a small beggar ride over their heads. Ling Xiao wanted to leave, but these people blocked his path. To be honest, one person against so many, he really wasn't confident of victory. After all, among them, including Ling Fei, there were several martial artists at the martial vein 3rd level. Since these people still wanted to be humiliated, then he would demonstrate his movement technique for them again. Anyway, the fierce tiger descending the mountain steps was just a basic technique. What he truly wanted to practice was the soaring cloud steps, so it didn't matter if it was exposed. Since you want to see it, then I'll show you again. After speaking, Ling Xiao pointed to a fruit on the large tree and said, "Let's use that fruit. I'll take it down, and then you won't bother me anymore." You're bragging. That fruit is about 20 meters from the ground. Senior brother Ling Fei might not even be able to do it. Exactly. If you can really take that fruit down, I'll climb around the tree twice and then bark like a dog. Ling Fei also said calmly, for a martial artist at the martial vein 3rd level, the highest limit for movement technique is about 15 meters. This Ling Xiao is bragging too much. What he said was common sense, and the Ling family disciples beside him also agreed, all waiting to see Ling Xiao make a fool of himself. Is that so? Ling Xiao secretly chuckled. Ling Fei was repaying kindness with enmity, and now someone else wanted to bark like a dog. It was a good opportunity to deflate these guys' arrogance, so that they wouldn't dare to bully him casually in the future. He secretly circulated his chi, and true chi condensed in his martial vein, then flowed through his meridians into his legs. Chi burst art. Fierce tiger, descending the mountain steps. Ling Xiao knew very well that Ling Fei's words were not wrong. But if he used the chi burst art, his fierce tiger descending the mountain steps could absolutely reach a range above 20 meters. Whoosh! A gust of wind sounded, and Ling Xiao stepped into the air, instantly soaring to a height of nearly 20 meters. Just as he was about to successfully pluck the fruit, a small stone suddenly shot over from the side. Chapter 13. Ice Fairy. Ling Xiao had long been on guard against anyone playing dirty. It was possible for these narrow-minded people to do anything. So, when the stone flew, just as it was about to hit his face, he suddenly threw a punch. He used the seventh form of Falling Star Fist, Falling Star Rain. The stone was hit, then flew back in the direction it came from. Ah! A scream was heard, but Ling Xiao had no time to look. He was already within reach of the fruit, so he decided to pick it first. However, because he had just struck the stone, he no longer had the strength to continue soaring. At the critical moment, Ling Xiao did not give up. Using his remaining true chi, he suddenly punched the ground. Falling Star Fist's eighth form, Heavenly Fire Raid. This punch was incredibly powerful. The reverse attack generated just enough thrust for his foot to reach the fruit. Whether by hand or foot, picking the fruit meant winning. The fruit was kicked by his foot, then fell down. He took it into his hand, and his body began to fall. Just as he was about to collide directly and at high speed with the ground, his body forcefully stopped about a meter above the ground. The chi recovery art had worked. He finally avoided embarrassment at the last moment, and his movements were not clumsy. Who just said they would crawl around the tree like a dog? Ling Xiao sneered, squeezing the fruit in his hand as he asked. Those who had been shouting earlier suddenly became silent, each lowering their head, unwilling to speak. Ling Xiao already knew these guys were spineless cowards. He smiled disdainfully, not pressing them further, but instead waved to the doctor and walked towards the courtyard. In his opinion, the matter should have ended there. Anyway, he wasn't an opponent for so many people. Showing off and then leaving was truly exhilarating. But he didn't expect that after just 2 steps, someone else started wailing. Brat, stop right there. You hit someone and you think you can run? Ling Xiao turned around. The one shouting was Ling Fei. Ling Fei's face was ashen, his eyes spitting fire, as furious as a fighting rooster. However, the aura formed by his martial vein, 3rd level strength, still brought immense pressure to those around him. Hit someone? When did I hit anyone? Ling Xiao asked, puzzled. Although Ling Fei was stronger than him, the other party was too overbearing, so he didn't need to back down. You're still playing dumb. Ling Fei snorted. Didn't you break his forehead? Blood is flowing like this, and you still won't admit it. As soon as these words came out, some of the onlookers felt a bit embarrassed, but most were as shameless as Ling Fei. Exactly, an outsider dares to hit a disciple of our Ling family's main clan. He must have eaten the heart of a bear and the guts of a leopard. Senior brother Ling, teach him a lesson. Beat this little beggar. Why should he cultivate martial arts with us, the Ling family disciples? Yes, he's not qualified. It was practically a public outcry. Ling Xiao had long known that these Ling family main clan disciples looked down on them, the outsiders, but he never expected them to be so shameless. He was so angry he laughed instead. When I was picking the fruit just now, someone tried to ambush me with a stone. I struck the stone away, and if he was injured, he deserved it. A person lives for their face, a tree for its bark. When he hadn't awakened the mountain and river martial soul, he hadn't feared anyone. Now that he had awakened the mountain and river martial soul, should he still back down in front of these people? Moreover, the other party was clearly looking for trouble. Even if he backed down, he wouldn't escape a brutal beating. Rather than that, he might as well fight. Good boy, you dare talk back. Senior brother Ling, what do you say we do? Among the onlookers, except for a few who felt genuinely ashamed and quietly retreated to the side, the rest surrounded Ling Xiao. Clearly, having lost face, they were preparing to gang up on Ling Xiao. Senior sister is back. Someone shouted, and the crowd, who had been staring at Ling Xiao like hungry hyenas, ready to gang up on him, suddenly all looked in the same direction. It was a girl in white, like an ice fairy walking out of a wonderland. She had bright eyes and white teeth, and skin like congealed fat. Though she merely walked, she captivated everyone, making them utterly infatuated. How can there be such a perfect woman in the world? This is simply a goddess created by heaven and earth. A young man almost knelt as he finished this sentence. His eyes no longer held Ling Xiao. They were completely occupied by the woman in white. Ling Xiao, 16 years old, the 3rd-ranked female disciple in the elite hall. It is rumored that she has cultivated to the peak of martial vein 3rd level, only a thin line away from martial vein 4th level. Ling Xiao also looked at Ling Xiao. After all, this woman was also the perfect woman in his heart. It was just that his reaction was much better than others. His admiration for Ling Xiao was not just because of her beauty, but more so because of Ling Xiao's strength. Ling Xiao, like him, was an outer sect disciple who entered the Ling family through the grand examination, but their circumstances were vastly different. This girl cultivated to the peak of martial vein 3rd level in 1 year, repeatedly defeating elite hall disciples and successfully advancing to 3rd place in the elite hall. All her resources were obtained through her own efforts, unlike Ling Feng, who ranked 10th in the elite hall and relied on the advantages of his main family. A genius probably referred to this kind of person. Previously, Ling Xiao's goal was Ling Xiao, because he believed his aptitude was definitely not inferior to Ling Xiao's. In fact, this was proven. If he hadn't cultivated that incomplete cultivation technique, his progress might have been even faster, probably not worse than Ling Xiao's. It was just that a loss might turn out to be a gain. Losing many things, but gaining the mountain and river martial soul was actually a kind of fortune. Before this, he truly didn't dare to look at Ling Xiao because of his inferiority complex. When they first entered the Ling family, both were highly regarded, but now their situations were as different as winter and summer. However, today, he didn't care much anymore. Ling Xiao was indeed a genius, but he would catch up quickly. As Ling Xiao approached, the Ling family disciples, led by Ling Fei, all stepped forward to greet her with an eagerness and enthusiasm that was truly something to behold. Seeing this scene, Ling Xiao understood even more clearly that this world was truly a world where the strongest reigned supreme. If his strength were powerful enough, Ling Fei would absolutely not dare to trouble him. Instead, he would treat him with great respect. By that time, absolutely no one would dare to call him a little beggar to his face. At most, they would just whisper a few words behind his back. Through the crowd, he admired Ling Xiao's beauty, and a mountain and river martial soul began to circulate as a result, analyzing Ling Xiao's situation with great thoroughness. Indeed, her true qi has begun to change. Some of her true qi has condensed into protective aura. When these quantitative changes undergo qualitative changes, that will be when Ling Xiao makes a breakthrough to the protective aura stage and enters martial vein 4th level. Ling Xiao felt a bit of pressure, but pressure brings motivation, so he needed to work harder. Just now I saw you surrounding him. Why was that? To Ling Xiao's surprise, Ling Xiao actually remembered him. Chapter 14, Contest of Light Kung Fu. It's like this, senior sister. Led by Ling Fei, the crowd began to explain what had happened, all talking at once. Of course, the story they recounted was naturally embellished. They were no strangers to distorting the truth. For them, it was already a well-practiced art. Is that so? Ling Xiao looked at Ling Xiao calmly and asked. Ling Xiao wanted to explain, but he held back the words at the tip of his tongue. He should solve his own problems, relying on a woman. What kind of situation was that? And if he did explain, and she didn't believe him, wouldn't that be awkward? Thinking of this, he remained silent. See, senior sister, he's already admitted it. Ling Fei said loudly. Ling Fei, are you even a man? You know better than I do what really happened just now. What? Now you want to drag senior sister Ling Xiao into this? Ling Xiao suddenly sneered. Brat, say that again. As the saying goes, a fair lady is a gentleman's pursuit. Ling Xiao was the secret crush of many in the Ling family, and that included Ling Fei. So, he absolutely did not want to lose face in front of Ling Xiao. I'm stating a fact. What's there to be afraid of? Ling Xiao said indifferently. Good. Today, with Ling Xiao here, I won't argue with you, but you have to pay for his medical expenses, and you also have to apologize to him in front of everyone. Ling Fei originally truly wanted to beat Ling Xiao up, but with Ling Xiao present, he couldn't make a move, lest he be accused of ganging up on him. So he played the role of a hero upholding justice. Apologize? Haha, you want me to apologize to a despicable, underhanded schemer? Ling Fei, your brain isn't fried, is it? As soon as Ling Xiao said this, even Ling Xiao couldn't help but frown. She just felt that Ling Xiao was a bit too overconfident. Someone who had just advanced to martial vein 2nd level dared to challenge Ling Fei, who was at martial vein 3rd level. Wasn't that simply seeking death? In Ling Xiao's view, having strength was called backbone. Lacking strength was called not knowing one's place. Senior sister, you heard him. This person injured a fellow disciple of our family, yet refuses to apologize. As a senior brother, I have no choice but to teach him a lesson. Ling Fei looked at Ling Xiao, seeking a reason to make his move. Fellow disciples, fighting and killing will always harm harmony. Just now I heard you say that Ling Xiao's movement technique also seems good. Why don't you two compete in movement technique? If you win, I will make him apologize. Ling Xiao said indifferently. I will heed senior sister's words. How about it, Ling Xiao? Do you dare to compete with me in movement technique? Although Ling Fei had witnessed Ling Xiao's movement technique, he wasn't afraid. Firstly, he was more confident, believing he was still stronger than Ling Xiao. Secondly, Ling Xiao had clearly almost exhausted his true qi just now. So if they competed now, he would actually have an advantage. What's there to be afraid of? Ling Xiao sneered inwardly. You want to show off in front of Ling Xiao, do you? Good. Then I'll make you lose face completely. He had seen Ling Fei's movement technique, and it wasn't particularly brilliant. Of course, if he relied solely on the fierce tiger descends the mountain steps cultivation technique, he probably wouldn't be able to surpass Ling Fei. But he had the mountain and river martial soul. The mountain and river martial soul's analysis and practice functions allowed him to seize the initiative in any competition. This was an advantage Ling Fei did not possess. Good, you do have some guts, but I'm afraid it's just foolish bravery. Ling Fei sneered, then looked at Ling Xiao and said, Senior sister, please be our witness, lest someone loses and doesn't admit it. Very well. Ling Xiao was somewhat interested in the competition between Ling Fei and Ling Xiao, because among the elite hall, Ling Fei's movement technique was definitely among the top 3. In this year's grand competition, Ling Fei might even become an opponent, so observing him first wouldn't hurt. After all, as an outer sect disciple, Ling Xiao could only obtain a large number of rewards through various martial arts competitions within the clan. Otherwise, she still couldn't compare to the main clan's disciples. She was a very practical person and wouldn't say any nonsense about such actions being dishonorable. When the main clan disciples secretly cultivated advanced cultivation techniques, no one seemed to think it was unfair. Of course, Ling Xiao had no interest in Ling Xiao whatsoever. The only reason she was willing to help was because she felt they were all outer sect disciples and didn't want Ling Xiao to be bullied too badly. Originally, her idea was for Ling Xiao to admit defeat and then apologize, and that would be the end of it. Who knew Ling Xiao would be so ungrateful as to agree to compete with Ling Fei in movement technique? Even she wasn't a match for Ling Fei's movement technique. Ling Xiao had only just advanced to Martial Vein's 2nd level a few days ago. How could he possibly win? This was simply a competition with a vast disparity in strength. The outcome was already decided. By now, even more people had gathered to watch. Many were there for Ling Xiao, and upon hearing that Ling Fei was going to compete with Ling Xiao in movement technique, they all dismissed it with disdain. It wasn't that they looked down on Ling Fei, but rather that they found this competition truly boring. A race between a hawk and a tortoise. Was there any suspense? Ling Fei always said he would use his trump card at the annual grand competition, but today, in front of senior sister Ling Xiao, he's probably going to pull out all the stops to perform. Haha, there's a show to watch. Everyone smiled, admiring Ling Xiao's beauty while watching Ling Fei warm up. As for Ling Xiao, who would care about someone destined to lose? They haven't said how they'll compete yet. Someone asked. The usual rules, just follow the 3 events we normally use for movement technique competitions. Which 3 events? The first is called soaring through the air. First, draw a line as the starting line. After taking flight, see how far you can go without your feet touching the ground. This is the distance in movement technique. The second is called ascending the heavenly ladder. Without external aids, see who can achieve a higher airborne height. This is the height in movement technique. And the third event is a competition of body movement speed. 1 round trip over 100 meters. Whoever is faster wins. The 3 events were all very simple, and the judging criteria were also very straightforward. The simpler the competition, the more it could reveal a person's true strength, because the possibility of cheating was relatively low. Junior brother Ling Xiao has already used his movement technique just now, so he's probably quite exhausted. As a senior brother, I'll give him a turn. I'll go first. Ling Fei believed that Ling Xiao's true qi would absolutely not recover within a short period. That's why he did this. Not only could it make him appear fair and noble, but it could also make him look good in front of Ling Xiao. However, if he knew that Ling Fei's qi recovery cultivation technique could completely restore true qi in a quarter of an hour, he probably wouldn't have made such a foolish decision. Senior brother Ling is indeed senior brother Ling. Unlike some people who injure others and still refuse to apologize, they truly don't deserve to be part of our Ling family. All right, stop talking. Anyway, senior brother Ling will win, and Ling Xiao will still have to apologize. Hearing the discussions, Ling Fei felt very satisfied. He stood at the starting line, ready to take flight. Begin. With Ling Xiao's command, Ling Fei soared into the air like a swift, flying quickly forward. So powerful. That must be 15 meters. Another broken record. Chapter 15, Amazing Movement. Being able to traverse 15 meters in midair doesn't seem that impressive when taken in isolation. However, a comparison reveals the truth. Among the current Elite Hall disciples, 14.5 meters is the best record. And this record was also set by Ling Fei. In other words, he broke his own record. At this moment, everyone was incredibly shocked. While Ling Fei might be ordinary in other aspects, his movement technique was truly the best in the Elite Hall. I can't compare to you. Ling Xiao parted her red lips slightly and shook her head. Senior sister is too kind. My movement technique is just decent. Nothing else would enter senior sister's dharma, Ling Fei said with a light chuckle, his words modest, but his face completely alight with excitement. He had gained face in front of Ling Xiao. How could he not be happy? Senior brother Ling Fei, can't you slow down your pace and wait for us brothers? Ha. As long as everyone works hard, you can do it too. Now for the second event. For the second event, Ling Fei once again delivered a tremendous visual impact to everyone. From a height of 18 meters, he leaped up and then landed gracefully, not only stylishly but also very steadily. It's your turn next, Ling Xiao. The speed competition requires 2 people to participate, so you should complete the first 2 events first. After completing the test for the first 2 events, Ling Fei looked at Ling Xiao and said with a light chuckle. At this moment, everyone's gaze finally focused on Ling Xiao, but their eyes held disdain and a hint of pity. It was like pitying a beggar begging by the roadside. No one believed that Ling Xiao's movement technique could surpass Ling Fei's, including those who were watching the show earlier. No need for your reminder. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and walked to the starting line. If it was purely about movement technique, he was indeed inferior to Ling Fei. This was certain. However, he had cultivated the Qi burst art, which could instantly boost the effect of his movement technique by nearly double. Surpassing Ling Fei might not be a problem. Putting on an act. Seeing Ling Xiao standing nonchalantly at the starting line, everyone felt a bit displeased. Begin. As Ling Xiao's voice rang out, Ling Xiao also soared into the air. Initially, he did not use the Qi burst art. He wanted to conserve true Qi as much as possible, as there were 3 events after all. He didn't need to be too astonishing. Just surpassing Ling Fei was enough. Oh, this kid's movement technique isn't bad. Although it lacks Ling Fei's effortless grace, it's quite decent. Ling Xiao frowned slightly. She hadn't expected Ling Xiao to master his movement technique so skillfully in such a short time. At about 12 meters, Ling Xiao's body began to fall. He lost. I told you, he can't compare to senior brother Ling Fei. But 12 meters is pretty good. At least it's not too embarrassing. However, just then, Ling Xiao, who was about to land, suddenly seemed to be pushed by something, and he shot forward more than 4 meters before finally landing. The scene was silent, as if everyone had become mute. Over 16 meters. Ling Xiao was the first to speak, the surprise in her eyes having turned into shock. What on earth had happened to Ling Xiao? How could his progress be so fast? Did I see that correctly? Was it really over 16 meters? No mistake. But what's going on with that kid? He suddenly flew several meters further just now. Cheating. Ling Fei suddenly shouted. It's not cheating. Ling Xiao shook her head and said, as a Ling family disciple, haven't you heard of a secret art like the Qi burst art? It's in a martial arts library. Of course, Ling Fei had heard of the Qi burst art. However, cultivating secret arts had always been more difficult than cultivating cultivation techniques, and the key was that they were very hard to comprehend. He had never imagined that Ling Xiao had actually learned it. Ling Fei was unconvinced, but he had no recourse. He trembled with anger, but had no choice but to concede defeat. Second event, ascending heavenly stairs. Ling Xiao's movements were never as graceful and flowing as Ling Fei's, but they were incredibly practical. As before, the Qi burst art was used when he felt he was about to fall. At a height of about 12 meters, he still shot up to 20 meters. Second event, Ling Xiao wins. He had won both the mid-air traverse and ascending heavenly stairs events. This was truly jaw-dropping. No one dared to say Ling Xiao's movement technique was poor anymore. Although his movement technique might have looked a bit ugly, it was not weak. Do we still need to compete in the third event, senior brother Ling Fei? Ling Xiao looked at Ling Fei's face, which had already turned a pig liver color, and asked faintly, compete? Why not compete? The Tao of movement technique is about speed. Ling Fei's words were practically shouted. Is that so? I originally wanted to give you face and end it now. Why bother? Ling Xiao said. Stop with the crocodile tears. I don't believe you can win the third event too. Ling Fei was certain that Ling Xiao's true qi must be completely depleted now, and he definitely couldn't sustain the third event competition. If he could easily defeat Ling Xiao in the third event, even if he lost the overall competition, he could still salvage a lot of face, and even take the opportunity to humiliate Ling Xiao. But there has to be some kind of prize, right? I've already won. There's really no need to waste more time with you. Ling Xiao had originally invited a doctor to treat his grandfather, but now, the doctor hadn't even entered the courtyard, and they had been stuck here for almost half an hour. If he didn't get some benefit, he really didn't want to continue the competition. I promise you, if you can still win, I will pay for all the silver needed for your grandfather's treatment. Ling Fei had no choice but to say this. Otherwise, if Ling Xiao refused to compete, he couldn't force him, and today's loss of face would be even greater. No need, I have silver. If it were before, Ling Xiao might have agreed to such terms, but now, he truly didn't care for it. Then what do you want? Ling Fei roared. A breakthrough pill. Ling Xiao planned to at least break through to Martial Vein 3rd level by the time of the annual grand competition, and this breakthrough pill was essential. This is too much. Yes, such a high demand. Who would use a breakthrough pill as a prize? Actually, you can't say that. After all, Ling Xiao has already won 2 out of 3 rounds, so there's no need to proceed with the 3rd round. There were still some sensible people, which gave Ling Xiao a tiny glimmer of hope for this family. You don't want to give it, do you? Then forget it. Ling Xiao shrugged and was about to signal the doctor to leave. Good. I agree. Ling Fei shouted. Senior brother Ling Fei, don't be impulsive. That's right. Senior brother Ling Fei, it's not worth it. Even you don't believe me anymore? Ling Fei's face was getting uglier, because from the onlookers' discussions, he could tell that their confidence in him had shifted to distrust, which meant he had truly lost a lot of face just now. Therefore, this third event was even more crucial. He absolutely had to regain his face. Senior sister Ling Xiao, please be a witness. These people's promises are like farts. I dare not easily believe them. Ling Xiao looked at Ling Xiao and said, all right, if he doesn't give it, I will give it on his behalf. By now, Ling Xiao had also developed a strong interest in Ling Xiao's movement technique, so she actually wanted to continue watching. Chapter 16, Breakthrough Pill. All right, senior sister, I believe you. So, senior brother Ling Fei, shall we begin? You don't need to rush me. Ling Fei and Ling Xiao stood simultaneously at the starting line. About 100 meters from the starting line, 2 Ling family disciples stood. The 2 of them had to run around those 2 disciples and then back. Whoever arrived first would win. The process didn't emphasize jumping or grace, only speed. At this moment, all the onlookers' gazes were fixed on Ling Xiao. They really wanted to know if Ling Xiao, who had already created 2 miracles in a row, could bring them another surprise. Begin. As Ling Xiao gave the command, Ling Xiao and Ling Fei, one like a flying swift and the other like a fierce tiger descending a mountain, shot out almost simultaneously. However, Ling Fei was in the air, while Ling Xiao ran like a tiger. Ha, what the hell is that? Does he think he's a tiger? So ugly. Some of the disciples who supported Ling Fei burst into laughter. Ling Fei was also secretly pleased, but he didn't have time to watch Ling Xiao's movements. He still had to win the competition first. The loud laughter almost stopped abruptly, because while Ling Xiao's movements were indeed ugly, his running was like a fierce tiger, even generating wind, causing air fluctuations. His speed was absolutely no less than Ling Fei's. When they rounded the 2 Ling family disciples, the 2 were almost synchronized, with Ling Fei only less than 1 body length faster than Ling Xiao. However, they all knew very well that Ling Xiao knew the Qi Burst Art. If he could almost keep up with Ling Fei without using the Qi Burst Art, then what would happen if he used the Qi Burst Art? Whoosh! A strong gust of wind told them the answer. On the return trip, Ling Xiao suddenly burst his Qi, and his body, like an arrow released from a bowstring, instantly reached the finish line. He was 3 body lengths faster than Ling Fei. Oh my god, this guy is too crazy. Someone stood up and exclaimed. More people, however, were stunned, because they understood what such speed meant. It would give a huge advantage in combat. How'd he do it? Senior brother Ling Fei's speed is already very fast, definitely one of the best among the elite hall disciples. How could this Ling Xiao be 3 body lengths faster than him? This guy is a monster. It's only been 2 or 3 days since he entered the martial arts library, and he can already cultivate his movement technique to such a degree. This is impossible. Impossible. How could I lose? How could I lose? Ling Fei's face was pale and bloodless, and he knelt on the ground in a daze. It was over. So many years of accumulated popularity were ruined just like that. And he also had to give up a breakthrough pill. Is the Qi Burst Art really that powerful? He didn't think so. In fact, one of his older brothers had also cultivated the Qi Burst Art. His purpose was the same as Ling Xiao's, but facts proved that although the Chi Burst art could indeed instantly increase speed, strength, and so on, the instant consumption was also huge, simply unaffordable. What's wrong with Ling Xiao? He completely didn't understand. After using the Chi Burst art 3 times in a row, he seemed to still have energy left? Is this guy really a prodigy? Whether he could comprehend it or not, this match was over. Ling Xiao won, with a clean sweep of 3 victories, and Ling Fei lost terribly. Ling Xiao wins this movement technique competition. Junior brother, you truly hide your strength well. Take this breakthrough pill. Ling Xiao took out a breakthrough pill and gave it to Ling Xiao. She knew very well that if Ling Xiao were to ask Ling Fei for it, he wouldn't get it, but she didn't need to ask. Ling Fei would send it over. Actually, because they entered the Ling family at the same time and their talents were basically similar, Ling Xiao had always paid close attention to Ling Xiao. However, as the gap between them grew wider, the opportunities for contact also became fewer. Only today did she seem to see the former high-spirited and determined Ling Xiao. Thank you, senior sister. Well then, everyone, may I leave? When Ling Xiao took the breakthrough pill from Ling Xiao's hand, his fingers touched the girl's skin. At that moment, it truly felt like an electric shock. This feeling was too special. Was this the expectation a boy has for a girl? Is it a feeling every boy has at a certain age? It wasn't bad. He really wanted to keep holding Ling Xiao's palm. It was soft, smooth, and had a gentle warmth. This scene made the onlookers' eyes burn with jealousy. Ling Xiao smiled faintly, took the breakthrough pill, said thank you, and then walked toward the courtyard. Today's matter was finally over. If it dragged on any longer, he really couldn't take it. The doctor was probably getting impatient. The Ling family disciples who were originally blocking the way all moved aside, creating a path. This was the prestige of the strongest. Ling Xiao won against Ling Fei with his strength and deserved such respect. Young master, you're truly amazing. The doctor not only didn't seem bothered, but also gave Ling Xiao a thumbs up, his face filled with admiration. Ling Xiao smiled wryly without speaking. If only you were a pretty young lady. Let's go, doctor. I've delayed you too much today. There will be another reward later. Where are you going, you good-for-nothing? Just as he stepped into the courtyard gate, 2 people came into view. One of them was Ling Chong, 9th Master Ling's son. He was the unlucky fellow whose ribs Ling Xiao had broken with a single move. He hadn't expected that in just a few days, he would already be lively and energetic. I just went to your place to find you, but you weren't there. Very good. Since we've met now, let's settle old and new scores together. Last time, you were ungrateful and ambushed this young master. Today, I will definitely beat you until you're begging for your teeth. Oh, and it's best if I break a few ribs too. Ling Chong's face was filled with excitement and malice. He had been recuperating at home for the past few days and was almost going crazy from boredom. Every day, he thought about revenge. Every day, he thought about taking out his anger on Ling Xiao. Although his father had taken out his anger for him in the martial arts library, that wasn't enough. He wanted to personally defeat Ling Xiao and make Ling Xiao look foolish in front of everyone. Last time, he lost in one move, and he felt truly resentful. The person next to him was his cousin, a disciple of the main family at the peak of martial vein stage 2. It seemed Ling Chong was worried about Ling Xiao escaping, so he brought a helper. What's going on? Ling Xiao also noticed the situation here and couldn't help but frown and ask. Senior sister, you probably don't know, but before entering the martial arts library, Ling Xiao used a despicable method to defeat senior brother Ling Chong in one move and even broke his ribs. Junior brother Ling Chong is here for revenge. Despicable method. It seems they said senior brother Ling Chong led him, and he, being ungrateful, suddenly ambushed him. Do you believe such nonsense? When has that Ling Chong ever held back when fighting others? Ling Xiao sneered. Although she was like a graceful fairy, she also experienced the ways of the world and understood some of the internal situations of the Ling family. Ling Xiao's experience was something she had actually encountered as well, but because her progress was faster, she encountered it less often. She had already decided to help. Ling Xiao had just competed with Ling Fei, and his true qi consumption must have been significant. At this moment, encountering Ling Chong, even if he could fight, he might not be an opponent. However, unlike her, some people were happy. For example, Ling Fei, who had lost to Ling Xiao. At this moment, he noticed Ling Xiao being stopped by Ling Chong, and a look of schadenfreude immediately appeared on his face. Chapter 17, Another Move. Enough nonsense. If you want to fight, then fight. Ling Xiao didn't like to stir up trouble, but he wasn't afraid of it either, especially since Ling Chong was no longer someone he paid attention to. Coupled with 9th Master Ling's constant obstruction of his cultivation. If I can't beat you, can't I deal with your son? A little interesting, not afraid. Ling Chong sneered. Don't think that just because you've had a breakthrough to martial veins 2nd level, you can act arrogant in front of this young master. Today you must kneel. He had the capital to look down on Ling Xiao. His martial, vain, second-level peak cultivation, which he had broken through to nearly half a year ago. Plus, advanced martial art. You talk too much. I still need to go treat my grandfather's injuries. Ling Xiao looked at Ling Chong, who, at this moment, seemed like a clown in front of him. Brat, how dare you be so arrogant? Ling Chong discovered that he was actually being looked down upon by the trash he had bullied for nearly a year. His anger immediately flared up, and his true chi surged into his palms. In the past few days, his giant spirit god palm had received personal guidance from his father, and it was now immeasurably stronger than last time. Plus, his father had gotten him many medicinal pills to boost his true chi. He was full of confidence. He struck out with a palm, truly like a giant spirit descending to the world. The palm wind swept past, causing Ling Xiao's hair to flutter continuously. Good heavens, this Ling Chong has actually comprehended the giant spirit god palm to this extent. He probably has about 30% mastery. Advanced martial art was difficult to master after all. For Ling Chong, with his martial vein second-level peak cultivation, to be able to master 30% was already very impressive. So even Ling Xiao showed surprise, and then a hint of displeasure. This Ling Chong's aptitude was not as good as hers, and his effort was not as good as hers, yet he could receive a large number of medicinal pills in advanced martial art. This was truly too unfair. Ling Xiao was now close to breaking through to martial vein 4th level, and she had only just obtained an advanced martial art through her own talent. She was very clear about the difficulty of cultivating advanced martial art, and she was also very clear about the power of advanced martial art. Even with only 30% power, advanced martial art crushed all intermediate martial art. This was a difference in class. This aura, this power, this speed, it's indeed at least twice as strong as last time. It's really good to have a good father. Although Ling Xiao didn't take Ling Chong seriously, he would never underestimate an opponent in battle. As the mountain and river martial soul operated, all of Ling Chong's information was displayed. So he could be sure that although Ling Chong's realm had not broken through, his combat ability was at least twice as strong as before. It was just a bit unstable, not solid. The reason might be that he had consumed too many medicinal pills. Heavenly Fire Assault. Using the mountain and river martial soul to pinpoint Ling Chong's weakness, Ling Xiao no longer hesitated. He activated the Red Sun art. His fists turned crimson, and then he executed the fierce tiger descends the mountain steps, pouncing towards Ling Chong like a fierce tiger. Today, Ling Xiao didn't plan to dodge the giant spirit god palm. He wanted to meet it head-on and forcefully defeat Ling Chong. This would deal a greater blow to the opponent, so that Ling Chong wouldn't come looking for trouble again. He didn't have time to accompany this guy. Facing Ling Xiao's counterattack, Ling Chong was clearly startled. He didn't expect Ling Xiao to know such a fierce fist martial art. However, upon closer thought, his giant spirit god palm was an advanced martial art, while the opponent's falling star fist was merely an intermediate martial art. There was no need to fear at all. However, what happened next filled Ling Chong with terror. Chi Burst Art. To completely defeat Ling Chong, Ling Xiao once again used the Chi Burst Art. This time, he held nothing back, completely unleashing the true Chi within his body. Falling Star Fist 8th Form. Heavenly Fire Assault. Under the terrifying boost of the Chi Burst Art, the power of this move increased several times over. In that instant, what Ling Chong saw before him was no longer Ling Xiao, but a burning meteor. It was a fierce tiger flying from the sky. Boom! Without any fancy moves, the fist and palm collided head-on. The advantage of the advanced martial art giant spirit god palm was its power and aura, and the advantage of the falling star fist was also its power and aura. A collision between a giant god and a meteor. With the aid of the Chi Burst Art, Ling Xiao unleashed the Falling Star Fist's 8th form, Heavenly Fire Assault, to a degree that even advanced martial art would shy away from. Advanced martial art, to put it plainly, was just more powerful. But if the power of an intermediate martial art increased several times, then there was almost no gap. Crack! Crack! Ah! Ling Chong let out a miserable shriek. His arms were directly broken by Ling Xiao's terrifying power, and then the impact was too much for his body to bear, sending him flying out. Bang! Ling Chong, who flew out, crashed into the wall, spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood, his eyes becoming hazy. Not dead, right? This level of power even startled Ling Xiao himself. He was truly afraid he might have directly killed Ling Chong. If he really killed him, Ninth Master Ling would definitely come at him desperately. After all, killing and injuring were two different concepts. No, impossible. How could my advanced martial art lose to you? How could it? Ling Chong was not dead. He slid to the ground and struggled to stand up, but his hands hung limply, unable to be raised. He shook his head excitedly, completely unable to believe this outcome. Another move. Ling Qiao was defeated by Ling Xiao in one move again. The Ling family disciples present were all breathing rapidly with tension. They truly found this result a bit hard to accept. In battles between martial artists of the same realm, although the outcome was unpredictable and anyone could win, losing in one move was truly too difficult to accept. What's more, the losing side had also cultivated an advanced martial art that was equally known for its strength. It's good that you're not dead. Then I'll take my leave. Ling Xiao confirmed that Ling Qiao was not dead, then quickly led the doctor away. At this moment, his true qi was truly exhausted. If anyone else came to provoke him, he wouldn't be able to handle it. Watching Ling Xiao leave, Ling Xiao's lips twitched slightly. She had not expected this outcome either. I didn't expect that the Qi Burst art combined with the Falling Star Fist could unleash a power even more terrifying than the advanced martial art, Giant Spirit God Palm. This Ling Xiao might truly make a name for himself in the annual martial arts competition. Senior sister, what kind of demonic art did that Ling Xiao use? How could he defeat Ling Qiao in one move? Watching Ling Qiao being carried away for treatment, Ling Fei felt extremely jealous. Because Ling Xiao defeating Ling Qiao in one move in front of Ling Xiao had left a very deep impression on her. Demonic art? I advise you to focus on cultivating martial art, and not always think about this and that. Your aptitude is good. If you were more focused, you wouldn't have lost the lightness skill competition today. Ling Xiao said coldly. Although they are both martial veins second-level cultivation, Ling Xiao's true qi is much denser than Ling Qiao's, and he's also good at coordinating different martial art. That punch just now encompassed the Falling Star Fist, Fierce Tiger Descends the Mountain Steps, Qi Burst art, and Red Sun art, for martial art. Besides him, who else could do that? How could Ling Xiao be so powerful? Has he been pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger all this time? Someone asked. Probably not. He might have had a sudden epiphany. Ling Xiao shook her head and said, but where did he get so many intermediate martial art? Someone else asked. I'm not too sure about that, but intermediate martial art can be bought at auction houses. The ones he cultivated aren't any unique martial art, so it's normal. Ling Xiao was actually a bit confused as well, but Ling Xiao's prowess was undeniable. Chapter 18 continued to improve. If Ninth Master Ling finds out about this, he'll definitely tear Ling Xiao apart. Ling Fei sneered. Ninth Master Ling probably won't act personally. After all, if he makes a move, it will become a handle for others to attack him. The reputation of bullying the young and weak is not good. Saliva can drown a person. However, Ling Qiao has a senior brother named Ling Taizhou, who is only second to Ling Feng in the Elite Hall, ranking 11th. He is at the martial vein 3rd level peak cultivation, so I estimate he will make a move. Back at his residence, Ling Xiao had a doctor diagnose his grandfather's condition. Broken ribs are not difficult to treat, but they require some precious medicinal pills, and those medicinal pills are quite expensive. The 90 taels of silver Ling Xiao had just acquired instantly turned into money for medicinal pills. However, he did not regret it. Healing his grandfather was not a loss. All right, young master, I have clearly written down the medicinal pills needed for external application and internal use. If you persist in using them for a month, you should fully recover. After sending off the doctor, Ling Xiao went to get the medicinal pills, came back to decoct them for his grandfather, and after making sure his grandfather rested well, he went out again. He knew very well that having injured Ling Qiao, trouble would surely follow. So he had to continue improving his strength. His fierce tiger, descending the mountain steps, had already reached major achievement, and it was time to activate the first heaven of soaring cloud steps. To avoid being disturbed, Ling Xiao directly climbed over the wall and left, then went to a jungle about 700 to 800 meters away from the Ling family residence. Fierce Tiger descending the mountain steps combined with Qi Burst Art can already defeat Ling Fei. I wonder how powerful soaring cloud steps will be. Ling Xiao felt a little excited. Through the mountain and river martial soul, Ling Xiao activated the first heaven of soaring cloud steps. However, this was just activation. To master it proficiently, he still needed to cultivate, but this way, cultivating would become relatively simple. This miraculous art truly was miraculous. It was so troublesome to cultivate and so difficult, yet its effect would definitely not be bad. It was precisely because he thought this way that Ling Xiao had the motivation to cultivate. Perhaps due to the foundation of Fierce Tiger descending the mountain steps and the effect of the mountain and river martial soul, Ling Xiao only took 1 hour to grasp the first heaven realm of soaring cloud steps. Although soaring cloud steps has a total of 9 heavens, this was just the beginning. However, after trying the effect of soaring cloud steps, Ling Xiao felt that no matter how hard it was truly worth it. He tried the effect of soaring cloud steps in the forest. The final conclusion was, even without using Chi burst art, the effect of the first heaven of soaring cloud steps could reach the effect of fierce tiger descending the mountain steps at great perfection without Chi burst art. When using Chi burst art, it was considerably stronger than fierce tiger descending the mountain steps, also using Chi burst art. This was only the first heaven. Could it be that this soaring cloud steps is not an ultimate martial art, but an advanced martial art? Otherwise, the effect couldn't be this good. Thinking of this, Ling Xiao had even more motivation to cultivate soaring cloud steps. It was simple. He chose to cultivate soaring cloud steps instead of bull demon skill because this light body movement martial skill was not only a good martial art for combat, but also a good martial art for escaping. Ling Xiao only had one life. Only by preserving his life could he continue to become stronger. While he was busy cultivating and improving his strength, Ling Xiao had already been sent to the Ling family's medicine hall. The Ling family's medicine hall was a place specifically responsible for refining medicinal pills and treating illnesses. Who injure my son? Ninth Master Ling and Ling Taizhou had already arrived at the medicine hall. Seeing Ling Chong's miserable state, Ninth Master Ling was so angry that he shattered a stone stool on the ground with a palm strike. Ling Xiao, the disciple who brought Ling Chong to the medicine hall, said tremblingly, "Ling Xiao? That good-for-nothing Ling Xiao." Ninth Master Ling was stunned. He had thought it was a master, but how could it be Ling Xiao? It really was that Ling Xiao. That guy seems to have mastered a unique skill that allows him to combine multiple martial arts. His strength is terrifying. He defeated senior brother Ling Chong in just one move, making him like this. Good for nothing. Ninth Master Ling cursed. Yes, that Ling Xiao is indeed a good for nothing. I wasn't talking about him. I was talking about my son, Ling Chong. Ninth Master Ling was both angry and frustrated. He had gone against family rules to get advanced martial art and a large number of medicinal pills for his son, but in the end his son not only couldn't rank in the elite hall, but was even defeated by Ling Xiao. To be defeated twice in a row, both in one move, how stupid must he be? Uncle Gio, don't be too angry. Ling Chong is your son after all. As for that Ling Xiao, I will take care of him. Ling Taizhou smiled. Taizhou, you are truly reassuring. Alas, why aren't you my son? You are only 1 year older than Ling Chong, yet you have already mastered 60% of Giant Spirit God Palm and cultivated to the martial Vein 3rd level peak. If you were to deal with that Ling Xiao, it would be as easy as squashing an ant. Ninth Master Ling seemed to value Ling Taizhou greatly. Uncle Gio, for so many years, I have always regarded you as my own father. My good-for-nothing father died early. If it weren't for your adoption, I wouldn't be where I am today. Ling Taizhou said. Good. Well said. From now on, you're my own son. Whatever you want, just say it, and I will fulfill it. However, even when beating a dog, you have to consider its owner. That Ling Xiao does need to be taught a lesson, but the annual grand competition is coming soon, so there's no rush. At that time, in front of all the Ling family disciples, we will make that kid lose face. Ling Xiao naturally did not know about this conversation, but even if he did, what he needed to do remained unchanged. After the first heaven of soaring cloud steps, the requirements became higher. He had to cultivate 2 intermediate movement martial skills to activate the second heaven. There was no other way. Ling Xiao temporarily stopped and instead went to cultivate Falling Star Fist and Red Sun Art. His plan was to cultivate Falling Star Fist and Red Sun Art to great perfection, then go back and choose 2 intermediate movement martial skills to cultivate. After all, in combat, one couldn't just think about escaping. One also had to improve combat power. Moreover, to quickly cultivate to the martial vein 2nd level peak, he also had to cultivate Red Sun Art and Falling Star Fist. In terms of promoting one's own strength, martial art and internal skill mind cultivation techniques are stronger than movement martial skills. And secret arts themselves do not help in promoting cultivation improvement. Therefore, ordinary martial artists do not cultivate too many martial arts, focusing more on the refinement of internal skill mind cultivation techniques and martial skills. Spending a day, Ling Xiao truly gained a lot. Red Sun Art had already cultivated to the 5th layer. Falling Star Fist had also finally comprehended the 9th form, Falling Star Descent. The only thing lacking for great perfection was proficiency, which could not be brought about by cultivation alone. It had to be honed through actual combat. At this time, as shown on the mountain and river diagram, he could clearly see that his true chi was a full 50% denser than it was a day ago. The denser the true chi, the more times Chi Burst Art could be used, and the greater the power of Falling Star Fist would be. The most obvious change in the mountain and river diagram was that the flame in the altar was much more vigorous than before. Ling Xiao vaguely felt that everything in this mountain and river diagram seemed to have some kind of connection with his own body, but he was not yet clear about it. Chapter 19, Fulong Mountains. Another 2 days passed, and Ling Xiao's falling star fist had reached great perfection, a realm where he could use it freely. According to the standard movements in the mountain and river martial soul, there was not a single discrepancy. His red sun art also progressed rapidly, finally cultivating to the 9th layer of great perfection, and his true qi surged once again. At the same time, his cultivation also smoothly reached the peak of martial vein 2nd level, and his 2 martial veins have been tempered to be very solid. Now, the density of his true qi, the intensity of his strength, and the toughness of his body would not lose to a martial artist at the martial vein 3rd level. In just about a week, he had transformed from a piece of trash in others' eyes into a martial vein 2nd level peak martial artist, with his strength increasing several times over. The source of all this was naturally the awakening of the mountain and river martial soul. By now, his interest in this mountain and river martial soul had grown even stronger and more profound. However, he encountered a bit of trouble when trying to break through to the martial vein 3rd level. A breakthrough in realm required some external assistance. This would not only make the breakthrough easier, but also prevent qi deviation. To put it bluntly, medicinal pills were needed. Medicinal pills similar to breakthrough pills, heart protection pills, and vein protection pills. He currently only had 1 breakthrough pill, which was far from enough. To break through safely, heart protection pills and vein protection pills were essential. Because he only had 1 life, and there was no protector during the breakthrough process, he could only protect himself. Returning home, after eating, Ling Xiao did not go to cultivate again, but entered his room to plan his future. In the past, he wouldn't even dare to think about the annual grand competition. But now, it was different. He was confident that he could successfully break through to the martial vein 3rd level on the day of the annual grand competition. As long as he could achieve good results in the grand competition, he would become a disciple that the Ling family would focus on cultivating. From then on, he wouldn't have to worry about many things himself. He would receive more resources and even get a monthly allowance, which was completely different from now. By then, let alone Ling Feng, Ling Fei, and others, even Ling Xiao, and even the genius disciples of other families in Tianfeng City, he would surpass them all. The effect of the mountain and river martial soul seems to be more than just practice and analysis. There are villages and land inside, perhaps even capable of planting medicinal herbs and raising Yao beasts. The materials for medicinal pills come from 2 sources, plants and animals. If he wanted medicinal pills, he would first have to gather enough materials. If he could plant plants and raise Yao beasts in the mountain and river diagram, that would be wonderful. The powerful analysis and practice effects, plus the effect of cultivating cultivation resources, this was simply perfect. He had to try it. Ling Xiao looked outside at the large expanse of dense mountain forest behind the Ling family's mountain. Tianfeng City was surrounded by mountains on all sides, and that mountain range was called the Fulong Mountain Range. The Fulong Mountain Range was densely forested, with complex terrain, and the highest peak reached over 8,000 meters, with year-round snow, making it very spectacular. No one knew how large the Fulong Mountain Range truly was, because even standing on the highest peak, one could not see through the entire mountain range. Legend has it that a dragon coiled within the mountains, but no one had ever seen it. However, there were many Yao beasts in the mountains, which had always been a fearsome, yet beloved existence for martial artists. Feared because Yao beasts were powerful and terrifying. Loved because many of the materials from Yao beasts could be sold for money or used for alchemy and refining medicinal pills. Yao beasts were artificially divided into 10 ranks. These were data obtained by martial artists with their own blood and experience. Generally speaking, the Yao beast rank was equivalent to a martial artist cultivation. For example, a first-rank Yao beast was basically equivalent to a martial artist at the martial vein 1st level. However, Yao beasts were naturally special. So in actual combat, a first-rank Yao beast was stronger than most martial vein 1st level martial artists. The legendary 10th rank Beast King could easily destroy a country. No one truly wished to encounter such a Yao beast. Ling Xiao went to the Fulong Mountain Range not to make money or hunt Yao beasts, but to find some special medicinal herbs and some young Yao beasts to try and see if he could plant and raise them in the mountain and river diagram. Once successful, he could raise those relatively rare plants or animals himself in the future, which would be a huge advantage. Swoosh! Leaping directly over the Ling family's courtyard wall, Ling Xiao took a stance and used soaring cloud steps to sprint toward the Fulong Mountain Range. Soaring cloud steps, even without using Qi Burst Art, was faster than riding a horse. If Qi Burst Art was used, it would be even more terrifying. Although it would consume true Qi, Ling Xiao had cultivated the Qi Recovery Art, which could basically ensure that his true Qi consumption would not be too great. Besides, using light body techniques was also a form of cultivation in itself. Before long, Ling Xiao had already arrived at the outer perimeter of the Fulong mountain range. He dared not go too deep into the forest. If he encountered a fierce Yao beast, or even a beast king, 10 lives wouldn't be enough for him to die. Anyway, he had only 2 objectives for coming here this time. One was to conduct an experiment to see if planting and raising were possible in the mountain and river diagram. The other was to collect materials for alchemy. The Ling family's medicine hall had special alchemy and alchemist masters. As long as you provided the materials and paid a certain labor fee, he would refine medicinal pills for you. Of course, the prerequisite was that you must be a disciple of the Ling family. The moment he entered the jungle, Ling Xiao suddenly smiled, because he discovered another benefit of the mountain and river diagram. On the mountain and river diagram, a cloud dispersed, revealing a jungle. Upon closer inspection, it was not difficult to find that this was precisely the Fulong mountain range. However, the Fulong mountain range displayed on this map only covered an area of about 1 kilometer radius with Ling Xiao as the center. If it only displayed a map, there would be nothing to be surprised about, but the crucial point was that the map also displayed several options. Medicinal herbs, wild beasts, Yao beast, humans. These options could be selected, and if chosen, they would be displayed on the map. Medicinal herbs appeared as green dots, and when clicked, one could see what kind of medicinal herb it was, with simple information displayed. Wild beasts appeared as yellow dots, Yao beasts as red dots, and when opened, they would show their rank. Humans were white dots, and when opened, they also had simple data analysis, just not as detailed as for Yao beasts. Upon seeing this, Ling Xiao was so excited he almost laughed out loud. He increasingly felt the wonder of his mountain and river martial soul. This diagram seemed to encompass the entire world, but it required certain events to trigger its display. However, despite his excitement, he did not forget what he came here for today. Since this display was available, it would be convenient. Ling Xiao's main targets were medicinal herbs and Yao beasts below the 3rd rank. Let's begin. Ling Xiao checked one of the green dots, then leaped into the air and sprinted towards the direction of the green dot. The plant displayed by the green dot was a plant called heavenly fragrance grass. This medicinal herb was the most important medicinal herb for refining vein protection pills. However, the troublesome part was that this medicinal herb basically grew on cliffs tens or even hundreds of meters high. If it were before, would Ling Xiao collect it himself? He wouldn't even dare to think about it. But now it was fine. With soaring cloud steps activated, stepping on the cliff, a height of 100 or 200 meters was very easy. Chapter 20. Mountain and River World. Done. Holding the heavenly fragrance grass in his hand, Ling Xiao was extremely excited because the price of this heavenly fragrance grass on the market was not cheap. Just this one stalk would cost 10 taels of silver. And refining one vein protection pill required a full 20 stalks of heavenly fragrance grass. There was a lot of heavenly fragrance grass nearby, so Ling Xiao simply went all out and pulled up all the mature heavenly fragrance grass, then landed on the ground. He entered the mountain and river diagram. He hadn't forgotten the purpose of his visit. Heavenly fragrance grass, this kind of medicinal herb, only exerted its maximum medicinal effect if used within 1 hour of collection. Even if used after a longer time, its medicinal effect would be greatly reduced. If it was truly possible to plant things inside the mountain and river diagram, then that would be wonderful. Welcome, Shanha Dominator, to the mountain and river diagram once again. This is the world of the mountain and river martial soul, inhabited by Shanha residents. These residents are skilled in various techniques. Some are good at planting, some are good at animal husbandry, some are good at alchemy. Ling Xiao had just entered the small village within the mountain and river diagram when he suddenly heard a voice in his mind. But when he looked for someone, he didn't see anyone speaking to him. In short, there is nothing they cannot do, only what you cannot imagine. As the mountain and river diagram continues to upgrade, you will receive more help. Currently, the mountain and river diagram is rank 2 and can only recruit rank 2 farmers and rank 2 herdsmen. Additionally, after the mountain and river diagram upgrades to rank 2, a shop will appear. The Shana Dominator can purchase needed items through these shops, including weapons, medicinal pills, treasures, tools, and so on. All goods are divided into 5 ranks: mortal grade, fine grade, rare grade, immortal grade, and divine grade. The effects vary according to the rank. Currently, the mountain and river diagram is already rank 2, and the shop is open. For the first opening of the shop, you receive 1 free draw opportunity. As the martial artist rank increases, the mountain and river martial soul will become stronger, and at the same time, the mountain and river diagram rank will also increase. Generally, they correspond. For example, if the Shana Dominator is at the 2nd level of martial vein cultivation, the mountain and river diagram will be rank 2. The higher the mountain and river diagram rank, the more types of goods can be purchased, the higher the rank, and the more powerful the Shauna residents that can be recruited. Eventually, it might even be possible to recruit top existences in various professions. Martial gods, medicine gods, gods of craftsmanship, and so on. Ling Xiao, who was somewhat dumbfounded by this series of prompts, only recovered after a long while and hurriedly clicked open the mountain and river diagram shop to take a look. There were only 12 items in the shop, but they refreshed every 2 hours. Currently, the main items available were farming tools. For example, mortal grade hoe, weeding efficiency increased by 10%, lifespan increased by 10%. Another example, fine grade scythe, harvesting efficiency doubled, lifespan doubled, chi consumption reduced by half. These should be used within the mountain and river diagram. If given to the farmers inside, they would definitely achieve twice the result with half the effort. However, the matter was not over yet. Shanha Dominator. For the first use of the recruitment function, you can recruit rank 2 farmers and rank 2 herdsmen and purchase mortal grade goods. The first recruitment will not consume anything, but only 2 people can be recruited. Please choose. As this voice sounded, Ling Xiao saw 2 cards appear on the mountain and river diagram. The card depicted a farmer and a herdsman, drawn in a landscape painting style, which was very beautiful. The cards also displayed the special effects that rank 2 farmers and rank 2 herdsmen could bring. Rank 2 farmer. Agricultural production efficiency increased by 10%. Agricultural production quality increased by 10%. Rank 2 herdsman. Pastoral production efficiency increased by 10%. Pastoral production quality increased by 10%. In other words, if medicinal herbs were planted within the mountain and river diagram, not only would the production efficiency increase, but the quality of the produced medicinal herbs would also improve. Similarly, raising animals would also be the same. Ling Xiao excitedly selected 1 rank 2 farmer card and 1 rank 2 herdsman card. He planned to plant some medicinal herbs and raise a few animals to slowly familiarize himself with this function. If it proved to be very useful, he would increase his investment later. Greetings, Shanha Dominator. Please assign tasks. After selecting to recruit, a puff of white smoke rose before his eyes, and soon 2 people appeared. One dressed as a farmer, about 30-something years old, and one dressed as a herdsman, also appearing to be in his 30s. However, the farmer was human, while the herdsman did not look like a human, but rather the minotaur race that Ling Xiao had seen in the mountain and river diagram before. Of course, whether human or minotaur, Ling Xiao understood what they said, but whether others could understand was unknown. Ling Xiao told the minotaur herdsman to rest first, as he hadn't caught any Yao beast cubs yet. Then he handed the heavenly fragrance grass he had collected to the human farmer and instructed, "Plant this heavenly fragrance grass. Remember, do not damage it. These medicinal herbs are very precious." Understood, Shanha Dominator. After receiving the order, the farmer went to work. Ling Xiao was a little worried at first, so he followed to observe. A moment later, he was completely at ease. A professional is a professional. If he were to plant heavenly fragrance grass, it was estimated that less than half of this pile of heavenly fragrance grass would survive. But the rank 2 farmer managed to plant all of them successfully and at a very fast speed. Ling Xiao was now increasingly looking forward to the future. If things continued like this, he might even be able to directly recruit alchemists in the mountain and river diagram in the future. In that case, he wouldn't have to depend on others for alchemy and refining medicinal pills. Even forging weapons, tools, and the like could be completed within the mountain and river diagram. He was not in a hurry to leave the mountain and river diagram, because some matters still needed to be understood in detail. Recruiting personnel or purchasing goods in the mountain and river diagram required the consumption of Shauna coins. And Shauna coins could be exchanged using real-world currency. For example, if Ling Xiao obtained 100 taels of silver in reality, he could choose to use it himself or exchange it for Shauna coins. According to the ratio, 10 taels of silver could be exchanged for about 1 Shauna coin, and recruiting 1 rank 2 farmer or rank 2 herdsman required 10 Shauna coins, which was equivalent to 100 taels of silver. This was indeed not cheap. However, the effects brought were also quite astonishing, and Ling Xiao did not feel that he was at a disadvantage. Moreover, because the mountain and river diagram rank was relatively low, there were only 2 types of residents that could be recruited, and their rank was only rank 2. If his cultivation continued to improve and the mountain and river diagram rank also continued to improve, then not only would the types of residents that could be recruited increase, but their rank would also improve. At that time, the efficiency of their work would naturally also be higher. Thinking of this, Ling Xiao was full of motivation. He now had another reason to improve his strength. Alright, I almost forgot that it said earlier that for the first opening of the shop, a draw opportunity was given. Let's see what good stuff I can draw. It would be great if I could draw medicinal pills. That's what I need most right now. The drawing method was the most common large spinning wheel. On the wheel were various items, including farming tools, weapons, cultivation techniques, medicinal pills, and so on. There were even consumable, mysterious rewards. Chapter 2100 Step Flying Sword. Ling Xiao activated the lucky draw turntable, and it immediately began to spin faster. To be honest, what he wanted most right now were medicinal pills. However, if he could draw other interesting and useful things, that would also be a good thing. There were many things on the large turntable that Ling Xiao was very interested in. For example, there was even a set of intermediate cultivation technique called 100 Steps Flying Sword Art. Such a cultivation technique was not available in the Ling family's martial arts library, and it could be said to be extremely rare. According to the description of the cultivation technique, it seemed that after this 100 Steps Flying Sword was mastered, one could take an enemy's head from hundreds of meters away. This felt even more powerful than a bow and arrow. A bow and arrow cannot be controlled. Once shot, it's shot. However, this 100 Steps Flying Sword Art can be controlled. As long as protective aura is cultivated, even if the flying sword is shot out, its speed and flight trajectory can still be manipulated. This is amazing. 100 Steps Flying Sword. Medicinal Pill. 100 Steps Flying Sword. Medicinal Pill. These were the two things Ling Xiao wanted most of the moment. So when the turntable spun, he couldn't help but shout, hoping to get them smoothly. Beautiful. It's the 100 Steps Flying Sword. Ling Xiao jumped up excitedly. Although this 100 Steps Flying Sword cannot improve cultivation, its improvement to combat power is too great. Just imagine, before others even get close to you, you can take their lives with a flying sword. That is truly unparalleled. Congratulations, Mountain and River Dominator, for drawing the intermediate cultivation technique 100 Steps Flying Sword Art. Because this is your first time using the lucky draw function, you are rewarded with one flying sword. This was an unexpected surprise. Ling Xiao looked at the introduction of the flying sword. Qing Feng Sword, a high-quality flying sword, can only be used to cast flying sword-type martial art. Flight speed is increased by 20%, and cultivation technique power is increased by 20%. Remarks. Items obtained from the Mountain and River diagram space have special effects only for the Mountain and River Dominator. If given to others, the special effects disappear. In addition, if the item is snatched, you can reobtain the exact same item from the Mountain and River diagram, with no limit on the number of times. Ling Xiao could understand this remark, which meant that even if this sword was snatched by others, it would just be an ordinary sword, and there would be no additional boost to flight speed and cultivation technique power. This was good. After all, a man's wealth is his ruin. Ling Xiao currently had no way to protect his good things, and it was indeed possible that this flying sword might be snatched by others. But if it's snatched, then so be it. It's just an ordinary steel sword, nothing to feel bad about, as the Mountain and River diagram would compensate him again anyway. So there was no need to worry at all. However, this Qing Feng sword clearly corresponds to flying sword-type martial art, such as 100 Steps Flying Sword Art being one of them. Its use should be relatively singular, but even so, it was already enough. Ling Xiao was not a greedy person. With these, his combat power would definitely increase a lot. Now, if he encountered Ling Chong, he wouldn't even need to make a move. With a flying sword, Ling Chong would die on the spot. After obtaining 100 Steps Flying Sword Art, Ling Xiao temporarily put aside his other work. After exiting the Mountain and River diagram, he found a quiet place and began to cultivate this intermediate cultivation technique. Unlike other martial skills, although 100 Steps Flying Sword Art also required 9 levels to reach great perfection, its move was only one, flying sword. After all, it was just an intermediate cultivation technique. You couldn't demand too much from it. It took Ling Xiao 2 days to cultivate 100 Steps Flying Sword Art to the 9th level great perfection. With the analysis and practice of the Mountain and River martial soul, cultivating this single-move martial skill was simply too easy. The most obvious feeling was that the higher the level of 100 Steps Flying Sword Art, the faster the flying sword's speed and the greater its power. After reaching the 9th level great perfection, a single sword strike could kill a martial artist at the martial vein 3rd level peak without any problem, unless the opponent had cultivated some powerful defensive cultivation technique. Caw! Suddenly, Ling Xiao heard a sharp cry from the sky. He looked up and saw a 2nd level peak Yao beast, a black eagle. This black eagle had been circling above Ling Xiao for 2 days now, not for the first time, seemingly looking for an opportunity to hunt Ling Xiao. With it there, Ling Xiao had been very frustrated with his cultivation for 2 days, forced to change several locations, almost causing him to suffer chi deviation. Today, this beast dared to come again. It was the perfect time to test the power of the 100 Steps Flying Sword. Thinking this, Ling Xiao stood up, holding the Qing Feng sword in his hand. activating the true chi within his body and operating the 100 steps flying sword art. Whoosh! The Qing Feng sword transformed into an afterimage and shot through the air. A sharp whistle pierced the air, rapidly approaching the circling black eagle. Compared to a bow and arrow, the advantage of 100 steps flying sword was that he didn't need to aim. As long as he locked on the target, unless the opponent blocked or dodged, it would definitely hit. Caw! The flying sword's speed was too fast. By the time the black eagle noticed it, it was too late to dodge. A white light pierced through its body, and blood splattered. Oh no, it didn't hit a vital point. This was Ling Xiao's first time using the 100 steps flying sword, and he was clearly still a bit rusty. So although this sword pierced the black eagle, it failed to hit a vital point. That thing was, after all, a second-level peak Yao beast, equivalent to a martial vein second-level peak martial artist. If it wasn't a vital point, this sword wouldn't be able to kill it. The black eagle was furious and swooped down, clearly intending to fight Ling Xiao to the death. However, this black eagle's intelligence was ultimately inferior to humans. It didn't know that the 100 steps flying sword was a round trip. Shoot out. Bring it back. That's one attack. Therefore, as the black eagle accelerated its dive, the Qing Feng sword had already returned, this time directly piercing the black eagle's head. This was not controlled by Ling Xiao, because before mastering protective aura, internal energy could not be released externally. Instead, it was because the black eagle itself moved its position, causing the flying sword to pierce its head precisely as it returned along its original path. Look, Ling Xiao couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It seemed that cultivation was one thing, but actual combat was another. When he cultivated 100 steps flying sword art, these past 2 days, he used stones or trees as targets. These were fixed targets, so they were naturally easy to hit. It seemed that to fully master the 100 steps flying sword art, he would have to try attacking more Yao beasts. There were many valuable materials on the black eagle's body. If sold on the market, it could fetch at least 1,000 taels of silver. After all, this was a second-level peak Yao beast. Its blood and bones could both be used for alchemy. After throwing the black eagle's corpse into the mountain and river diagram, Ling Xiao, holding the Qing Feng sword, used soaring cloud steps and began searching in the Fulong mountain range. He was looking for Yao beast cubs, and of course, he could also hunt a few Yao beasts below the 3rd level to sell for money. After all, selling cultivation techniques secret manuals was a bit too conspicuous. Basic martial art and low-level martial art were fine, but once intermediate martial art were sold, it would be impossible not to be discovered. Those are black eagle chicks. When Ling Xiao killed the black eagle earlier, he wondered if the creature would leave behind chicks, so he specifically searched along the areas where the black eagle frequently circled. Sure enough, he found a bird's nest on a cliff containing 4 chicks. Ling Xiao put them into the mountain and river diagram without a word, then handed them over to the second-level herdsman to help raise them. Not only can the materials from these black eagles be used for alchemy, but after they grow up, they become second-level peak Yao beasts without needing to cultivate and can even serve as helpers at critical moments. Chapter 22 Howling Moon Wolf. Having found the black eagle chick, Ling Chong did not stop his search. There was only one type of medicinal herb and only one type of Yao beast, which was clearly not enough. Heavenly Star Flower, one of the materials for refining breakthrough medicinal pills. Dual-winged snake. Its gallbladder is an important material for refining heart protection medicinal pills. An adult is a level 1 peak Yao beast with potent venom. Qi transformation fruit, the main material for refining breakthrough medicinal pills. Adamantine wolf. Its bones can be used to refine adamantine pellets. An adult is a level 3 common Yao beast. While searching for medicinal herbs and Yao beasts, Ling Chong also began to try to cultivate 2 intermediate movement techniques simultaneously. 3 days later, these 2 intermediate movement techniques had already reached great perfection. Ling Chong directly activated Soaring Cloud Steps, 2nd Step Heaven. Then he continued to practice. After reaching 2nd Step Heaven, the speed of Soaring Cloud Steps already far surpassed that of martial artists of the same level. Even the speed of a martial vein 3rd level peak martial artist was inferior to his. If he used Qi Burst Art, even if he encountered a martial vein 4th level martial artist, he could still easily escape. As for 100 Steps Flying Sword Art, it was also frequently used when hunting Yao beasts, so in these 3 days, he had almost mastered 100 Steps Flying Sword Art to the point of perfection. He could control it freely, and his targeting was more accurate. If he were to encounter that black eagle again, there would absolutely not be a situation where he couldn't hit a vital point like the first time. He could definitely kill it with one sword strike. Continuously cultivating movement techniques and 100 Steps Flying Sword Art for 3 days, because he had to operate Red Sun Art every time. This also caused Red Sun Art to progress rapidly, having already cultivated to the 9th layer, close to the Great Perfection realm. Of course, besides the improvement in strength, he also gained a lot of other things. Besides the Yao beasts he hunted being worth 2,000 to 3,000 silver taels, his mountain and river diagram already contained 10 types of plant medicinal materials and 3 types of Yao beast cubs. If it weren't for the small number of farmers and herdsmen, making it impossible to take care of them, he would definitely choose to stay here for a few more days. However, it was time to go back now. The materials were almost collected, and the next step was to use them to refine medicinal pills. After all, the crucial thing was to raise his strength to martial vein 3rd level, which was very important for the annual grand competition that was only a few days away. If there was any regret, it was that he hadn't seen a level 3 peak Yao beast in these past few days. There was nothing he could do. He really didn't dare to venture deep into the Fulong mountain range alone, because it was simply too dangerous. If he lost his life, it would truly be too uneconomical. Oh, whoa. Just as Ling Xiao was about to leave, he suddenly noticed a huge red that displayed on the mountain and river diagram. Then, a howl that was enough to make his blood surge resonated. Level 4 Yao Beast, Howling Moonwolf. Ling Xiao clicked on a large red dot and was startled. He quickly fled. If a level 3 peak Yao Beast was difficult to deal with, a level 4 Yao Beast was out of the question. That was definitely not something a martial vein 2nd level peak martial artist like him could handle. Get lost. This Howling Moonwolf was lured out of the mountains by us. As he was about to leave, he saw a group of youths surround him. Roughly estimated, there were 12 or 13 people, and their strengths were all considerable. The strongest among them should be comparable to Ling Xiao, both being martial vein 3rd level peak martial artists. Get lost? I wasn't even planning to snatch this broken thing from you. Can't you speak properly? Ling Xiao frowned and said, I am Li Xingyun. My junior brother was rude just now. Please forgive him. May I know your excellency's name? This person's attitude was quite good. Li Xingyun? Right? Isn't this the genius disciple of the Li family in Tianfeng City? I am Ling Xiao. No need to mind it. I'm leaving anyway. Ling Xiao was originally a bit annoyed, but since Li Xingyun was quite polite, he didn't bother to dwell on it. So, it's a disciple of the Ling family. Meeting his fate. This Howling Moon Wolf is powerful. How about we deal with it together? Afterwards, you will naturally have share of the spoils. Li Xingyun said with a smile. No need. I'm a coward. Ling Xiao waved his hand, turned around, and left without any hesitation. Coward. I've never even heard the name Ling Xiao. He's probably just an ordinary disciple. Senior brother Xingyun, you're really something, wasting words on him. If it were Ling Feng, Ling Tai's Ho, or Ling Xiao helping, that would be different. Enough, all of you stop talking. The Howling Moon Wolf is already here. Quickly set up the trap and prepare to attack. Li Xingyun waved his hand. Although he was clearly only 15 or 16 years old, he already had the demeanor of an expert. Ling Xiao stopped when he was about 200 or 300 meters away. He was quite interested in how the Li family, one of the 4 great families of Tianfeng City, would deal with this Howling Moon Wolf. A level 4 Yao beast was equivalent to a martial vein 4th level martial artist, capable of wielding protective aura. The Li family disciples set up the trap, leaving only Li Xingyun there as bait. The others hid, preparing to attack together once the Howling Moon Wolf entered the trap. However, they clearly underestimated the Howling Moon Wolf's strength. Oh, whoa. When the Howling Moon Wolf charged over, it let out a howl, and blade-shaped protective aura actually flew out of its mouth, tearing up the ground. All the traps that had been set were destroyed. Not good. This guy is too strong and very cunning. We are no match. Retreat. Li Xingyun originally just wanted to see how his martial vein 3rd level peak cultivation would fare against a level 4 Yao beast, but he clearly didn't expect a level 4 Yao beast to be so strong. It was completely unexpected. Only he could withstand a few blows. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be directly killed by that blade-shaped protective aura. As soon as he finished speaking, someone was already cut in half. That person was a martial vein 2nd level peak martial artist, hiding behind a large tree, who knew that after the tree was cut down, he was killed along with it. At this point, the Li family disciples panicked, scattering and fleeing. Some even accidentally tripped over tree roots. This is the terror of a level 4 Yao beast. Ling Xiao, hiding in the shadows, had no intention of mocking the Li family disciples. Against a Yao beast of this level, he would also have to flee just as miserably. Don't panic, everyone. I'll hold it off first. You all retreat quickly. At the crucial moment, Li Xingyun acted like a true figure. He didn't turn and run, but instead shook the long sword in his hand and aimed it at the Howling Moon Wolf. The blade-shaped protective aura that had attacked him earlier was all blocked by his sword. This also made him clearly aware of the gap between himself and a level 4 Yao beast. Victory was absolutely impossible, but perhaps he could hold on for a while. It must be said that Ling Xiao had some admiration for Li Xingyun. Such a person was much more brilliant than Ling Fei, Ling Xiao, or Ling Feng. Perhaps only Ling Xiao could be compared to him. Wind sword. Li Xingyun roared, stomped his foot on the ground, and flew out, his long sword pointing directly at the howling moon wolf's throat. No matter what kind of Yao beast, the throat was always the weakest point. Li Xingyun clearly knew this. Wind sword? That should be an advanced sword technique. Li Xingyun truly lived up to his name as a genius of the Li family, actually being able to obtain an advanced sword technique. It seemed he was also a key cultivation target. Senior brother Xingyun go, kill that evil creature. Seeing Li Xingyun attack, those panicked Li family disciples actually stopped and began to shout. What a bunch of useless brats. Why aren't they running away at a time like this? It's a miracle Li Xingyun isn't infuriated to death by them. Ling Xiao watched, utterly speechless. He knew very well that although Li Xingyun was formidable, he could only temporarily slow down the howling moon wolf's attack, all for the sake of letting the other Li family disciples escape. These fools, on the other hand, were simply a bunch of pig-headed idiots. Chapter 23, Shameless. Tear. The sword in Li Xingyun's hand pierced into the howling moon wolf's body. However, it only went in about half an inch before it could go no deeper. The terrifying defense of a level 4 Yao beast. Its bones were as hard as the sword in Li Xingyun's hand. Ow! The howling moon wolf cried out in pain, opening its mouth to howl, and a protective aura blade shot out again. Li Xingyun hastily pulled out his sword to block, but he was still hit by one attack, and although he had clearly cultivated a defensive cultivation technique and was not seriously injured, the wound was still quite terrifying. Coupled with the force unleashed by the terrifying protective aura blade, he couldn't maintain his balance and was sent flying, then crashing into a tree. This injury might not be much for a martial vein third-level peak martial artist, but in a battle between experts, life and death are separated by a hair's breadth. He was already inferior to the Howling Moon Wolf, and now that he was knocked down, how could the Howling Moon Wolf let go of this opportunity? It leaped fiercely and pounced. Senior brother Xingyun. When the Ling family disciples saw this situation, they were all terrified, some even covering their eyes. Clang! Just as Li Xingyun was about to die, tragically under the Howling Moon Wolf's gaping maw. Suddenly, a sword light flew by, bypassed the obstacles, and then hit the Howling Moon Wolf. Ow! The Howling Moon Wolf let out a hysterical shriek. It sounded extremely piercing, even causing several Ling family disciples to foam at the mouth and faint on the spot. The surrounding plants also rustled, as if trembling from the howl. The Ling family disciples looked on in surprise, discovering that the sword light had already flown away, and the wound on the Howling Moon Wolf's forehead was clearly deeper. This sword had coincidentally struck the wound Li Xingyun had previously left on the Howling Moon Wolf's forehead. The sword light flew in and out, all in an instant, and when the Howling Moon Wolf tried to find the attacker, it found no one. At this time, Li Xingyun also took the opportunity to escape. He was a smart person, knowing that someone was helping him. No matter who it was better to save his life first. However, the Howling Moon Wolf clearly wouldn't let him go easily. Unable to find the sneak attacker, the Howling Moon Wolf directed all its hatred towards the Ling family disciples. Frenzied pursuit. Ah! Screams rang out continuously. In just an instant, 2 of the Ling family disciples had already died. Li Xingyun, at this moment, wanted to stop the Howling Moon Wolf, but he was powerless. He was already feeling dizzy from excessive blood loss. It seemed that all the Ling family disciples present today were about to be slaughtered. Suddenly, that sword light appeared again. Clang! It still accurately struck the previous wound. How? No matter how strong the Howling Moon Wolf was, it was still just a level 4 Yao beast. Ling Xiao's 100 Steps flying sword had already cultivated to the great perfection of a 9th level, coupled with the power bonus of Qing Feng's sword, and the double power increase from Qi Burst Art. He stabbed it twice consecutively in its already open wound. Even if its bones were hard, they were still pierced. Of course, trying to kill the Howling Moon Wolf with just this was still a bit of a pipe dream. However, the Howling Moon Wolf was in the open. Ling Xiao was in the shadows, continuously unleashing 100 Steps flying sword. After each release, he would change positions, and when the Howling Moon Wolf arrived there, it could only howl at the sky in anger. When the Howling Moon Wolf focused its target on Ling Xiao, those Ling family disciples had already begun to retreat. They had truly witnessed the Howling Moon Wolf's terror just now. If they didn't escape now, they would truly have no chance later. Let's go, senior brother Xingyun. No matter who made the move, at least we saved our lives today. Seeing that Li Xingyun was still reluctant to leave, everyone urged him. Li Xingyun hummed, but was clearly still a bit unwilling. The Howling Moon Wolf's aura had clearly weakened a lot, and it looked like it was about to die. Leaving like this was truly too much of a pity. To be honest, the initial wound on the Howling Moon Wolf was left by him. Ow! Just then, The howling moon wolf suddenly let out a cry and turned to flee deep into the jungle. Ha ha, I won't wear you down. Amidst the loud laughter, a figure chased in the direction the howling moon wolf had fled. Ling Xiao, who had unleashed soaring cloud steps, was definitely much faster than the howling moon wolf, whose steps were unsteady due to excessive blood loss. This howling moon wolf was full of treasures, worth over 40 to 50,000 taels of silver. This half-day's effort couldn't be wasted. After all, he didn't save Li Xingyun to save him. Ultimately, he saw an opportunity to kill the howling moon wolf. Isn't that the Ling family disciple from earlier? Someone recognized Ling Xiao. Yes, it seems his name is Ling Xiao. This guy's movement technique is terrifying. How can he be so fast? That flying sword technique just now must have been used by him. Where did he get such a martial art cultivation technique? I've never heard of the Ling family having such a sword art. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have lost so many people. Exactly. If senior brother Xingyun hadn't wounded the howling moon wolf first, would he have been able to do it? Among the Ling family disciples, there were clearly some who were stronger than Ling Xiao and harbored dissatisfaction. Among these people, besides Li Xingyun, who was at the martial vein 3rd level P cultivation, there were also 3 others who were at the martial vein 3rd level cultivation. They naturally looked down on Ling Xiao, feeling that Ling Xiao had taken advantage. Yeah, but that's fine too. Once he kills the howling moon wolf, we'll just pick up the scraps directly. A Ling family disciple at the martial vein 3rd level sneered. Li Xingyun's expression was grim, and he seemed to have the same intention. This isn't picking up scraps. We were the ones who lured out the howling moon wolf to kill it. No one asked him to make a move. Someone else said, "Ow!" Just then, a mournful cry came from several hundred meters away. Everyone could tell it was the final wail before death. Dead. Go. Let's go see. Li Xingyun waved his hand, and everyone followed. Although 3 people had died, they still had about 10 people, so they certainly weren't afraid of Ling Xiao. Not far away, Ling Xiao wiped the sweat from his forehead and was sitting cross-legged on the ground. He was using Qi recovery art to restore his true Qi. In order to kill the howling moon wolf, Ling Xiao had continuously used Qi burst art, consuming a great deal of true Qi. Now that he had finally killed it, his true Qi was almost depleted. He was very worried that those Ling family disciples would come looking for trouble, so he didn't rush to clean up the scene, but instead rushed to restore his true Qi. If the other party did cause trouble, he would be prepared. Besides Qi recovery art, he was also chewing on a type of medicinal herb, which was used to refine Qi recovery pills. Although the effect would certainly be much worse than a Qi recovery pill, having something was better than nothing. Being able to kill a level 4 Yao beast, the howling moon wolf, with a martial vein 2nd level P cultivation this time, could only be attributed to good luck. If it weren't for the wound opened by Li Xingyun's sword, his attacks wouldn't even have been able to break through the howling moon wolf's defense. Although he was very unconvinced, this was the reality. When the realm difference is too great, even if your cultivation technique is powerful, it's very difficult to bridge that gap. It seems that improving his cultivation is imperative. A moment later, the Ling family disciples indeed arrived at the scene. Leading them was Li Xingyun. Brother Ling, this howling moon wolf was discovered by us, and we were the ones who lured it out. Since Brother Ling helped kill it, we will naturally give Brother Ling some items as compensation. Li Xingyun's words were calm and composed. However, at this moment, in Ling Xiao's eyes, he had already transformed from a graceful young master into a pile of stinking, shameless fellow.